Those who are watching, it is official. The lookup tool does work. So for everyone who's watching, you can now go back online and look yourselves up. So I didn't test it. I did get emails that it wasn't working, but I didn't test it. I trust that it wasn't working. Okay. So let's back up. Good.
It should be.
Yes. Are you testing this?
No.
Oh, I thought you were testing it. I was like, oh, okay.
Thank you, Deb.
We'll test it now.
I love it.
Okay. All right, Glenn.
That choice of music was great.
I never hear that.
He said he leaves it up to the staff. So.
Sorry. Got a lot going on today.
That's why.
Well, thank you. I'm glad to hear it.
Yeah, that was my initial.
So thank you. We're here to present the final draft from staff. We'll turn it over to you, the board, after tonight's meeting. We'll go through each of the individual schools and any changes from draft 2 to draft 3. We'll get started. So again, just to circle back, we are in a high growth area. This is our growth. Historic growth for the last 6 years has been about an average of 13,000. Well, we've grown by 13,500 students. The forecasted growth for the next 6 years is about 14,500 students. Going out 10 years, we're looking at 24,614 students. So in 2019-2020, we'll be opening 4 new schools. This is our 7-year plan. So just remember, this is 1 year in a multi-year plan. We're always looking ahead. As you can tell, when we were opening schools last year, we were thinking ahead to schools this year. So just to point out those schools, in 2021, we'll have 1 school opening in the Fuquay Marina area in elementary. In 21-22, we'll have 2 schools in elementary and a high school. 22-23, we'll have 1 school. 1 school again in 23-24, 3 in 24-25, and 6 in 25-26 as part of our current 7-year plan. These are the schools listed here. It shows the schools that we've opened previously. This is again from draft 1, this slide. Policy 4150, this is the driver of what staff uses to create an assignment plan. And just to remind you that we have 4 pillars: student achievement, stability, proximity, and operational efficiency. At this point in time, in the area that we are in the county now, operational efficiency will most likely bubble to the top when we're dealing with these schools, because we have schools that have enrollment caps. And what we try to do in our assignment plan is to relieve that crowding at those schools. So starting out with Southeast Raleigh Elementary. Plan to open on the traditional calendar with a capacity of 426. The year-round application school being Timber Drive Elementary. The impacted schools of Harris Creek and Rogers Lane. And I just wanted to point out some information. All of your tables will be updated with the updated information from this year's ADM. That's correct, right? So from this year's ADM, and the capacities do not reflect the regional special education program. That's how you'll see the difference between draft 1 and draft 3. For all of the schools, their capacity may have changed due to the regional special ed seats. And again, you'll see the ADM is different, so our projections are different based on the new ADM, what we've learned from last year's ADM to this year's ADM.
Meaning enrollment.
Correct.
So for the public,
ADM is enrollment.
average daily membership.
Okay.
But it's actually enrollment, which is more than average daily membership.
Okay, Southeast Raleigh. So changes for draft 3. We had originally spoke in draft 2 about an area for Poe Elementary being assigned to Southeast Raleigh Elementary. We are going to reverse that move based on parent feedback and the programs they have set at school already for these families. Another question that came up was the housing on site for Southeast Raleigh Elementary. And according to Kia Baker, they're going to have 120 units on site by 2020. They do have projected more coming eventually, but they don't know when they're going to be built or when they'll be finished.
But that allows that space for those students.
Okay.
Yes.
We're assuming those units are going to
That's why
be
I'm-
family
let me write
units,
that
not
down. I didn't-
Yes.
retired units.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
So,
Go ahead.
nope, I'm gonna write it down.
Okay, so then we have just a before and after map like we've seen moving forward. You've got the base attendance areas here, current ones, and then the proposed ones here. The purple outline is the application area for the school. Okay, the yellow being the base attendance area. This slide here just shares all of the column headers. That was again in draft 1. So moving to the final before and after tables here, you've got Southeast Raleigh, again with a capacity of 426. This capacity, the enrollment here, the projections here include 75 students from the on-site housing. So 75 students projected in from the on-site housing, plus the students moving from Harris Creek and Rogers Lane would comprise of the utilization shown here in this chart.
So that's out of the 120 units, there's 75.
We're just projecting 75 for 1920.
That's what I just said. I was like, that's the number that was in our head. 120 wasn't in my head, but that's all. Okay.
Oh, yes, that's the number you were thinking about, yeah.
Okay. Any questions about Southeast Raleigh Elementary?
Thank you for making the code change, and also it's good to see Rogers Lane utilization come down. Thank you.
Okay, Parkside Elementary. So I just wanted to bring this slide back again to remind everyone about the K-3 class size legislation concerns, the overcrowding at specifically Mills Park Elementary. That school has been capped since 2012. So Parkside is opening, or is proposed to open on a multi-track year-round calendar with a capacity of 834. The traditional calendar application schools, Powell Elementary, we're proposing with neighborhood bus transportation, and Pleasant Grove with express bus transportation. Impacted schools being Alston Ridge, Carpenter, Cedar Fork, Mills Park, and Morrisville Elementaries. So just some notes. So Parkside Elementary, we're using the McCrimmon Parkway as the proposed divider to the north. So there's a clear cut along McCrimmon Parkway. The proposed draft 2 changes to the south would keep the existing boundary at it as is, and I'll show you in just a second what I'm talking about there. But that's the area from Cedar Fork that was proposed to go to Carpenter. That in draft 2 we brought them back to Cedar Fork. Alston Ridge Elementary, Cameron Pond North is proposed to remain at Alston Ridge Elementary. Carpenter Fire Station Road now becomes the southern boundary west of Highway 55 that we're proposing. And Carpenter Elementary, Cameron Pond South, and Indian Wells are proposed to be assigned to Carpenter Elementary. So here are the before and after maps. Okay. Here is the boundary line here. That's McCrimmon Parkway. So everything in the yellow north of McCrimmon Parkway there is assigned to Parkside. Everything south to Cedar Fork. So in draft 2, we had a portion down here that was assigned to Carpenter out of Cedar Fork. We have reversed that move in draft 2, and we're keeping that the same in draft 3. Okay, and then here is Carpenter Fire Station Road over here. So Cameron Pond North, we would propose that they remain assigned to Alston Ridge. And Cameron Pond South and Indian Wells here remain assigned to Carpenter for draft 3.
We're supposed to hold our questions. So will we be talking about like traditional, the traditional school where they go to year-round, their calendar options? Will we be talking at another slide, or is that?
No, we can discuss that now. So our recommendation is for Powell with neighborhood busing and Pleasant Grove with express busing. That would be
And
staff.
is the change there that previously it was Pleasant Grove without?
district transportation, and we've added express busing.
Okay.
I was thinking the other way around about something. I think I'm looking at something. There, go ahead.
Well, that,
Piggyback on Ms. Cash, I do have a concern that that neighborhood is being treated, or the folks who are base assigned Parkside year-round are being treated differently than other base areas for their traditional choice. I do think they need to have some equity. And so Pleasant Grove, as with express busing, isn't a choice for a parent who can't get to an express bus stop. So that's my only, I think, I appreciate that the current plan has that K-8 alignment. That was one of the macro issues this board asked the staff to do, is to clean up some of the mismatches in this area that we have been hearing from parents, and to address the capping. You mentioned Mills Park Elementary has been capped since 2012. The middle school in 2014. Davis Drive since 2014. We asked you to address the capping because it does spend resources in an inefficient manner. So I appreciate they all have tried to do that. My one concern is with the traditional application schools, we need to be somewhat equitable. And should Pleasant Grove perhaps be a choice for more proximate neighborhoods? But so I would appreciate staff looking at that one more
So
time.
can you clarify what you're saying, just the last one?
What I would like is for folks who are Parkside year-round based to have traditional application choices that are similar to other neighborhoods in Western Wayne. And that's not comparable.
I know, I'm just actually asking directly, did you just say you think Pleasant Grove should have
I think they should have neighborhood transportation to a close-by traditional school.
But you weren't saying what school? I guess I'm trying to clarify what you just said.
Yes, I'm leaving it to staff, but I
Does
think
Pleasant Grove qualify?
that maybe Pleasant Grove should be an option for neighborhoods that are closer to Pleasant Grove. Yeah, maybe.
What traditional schools do we have room?
Because as an example, I think there's I don't want to name names. There's one neighborhood that's closer to Pleasant Grove that is, their traditional choice is Green Hope or...
Yeah, so Alston Ridge Base,
Yeah.
their calendar application schools would be Hortons Creek and Green Hope.
And Green Hope is closer to the Parkside neighborhoods. So maybe Pleasant Grove should be the choice for some of the Alston Ridge families, and Green Hope should remain for some of the Parkside families because it's closer.
So I'm only asking for clarification because we're up less than a month away. And
I
so
understand.
it's not that I'm pushing you. If you don't have an answer, just say
Yes.
don't. But I'm going to ask for clarification if we're giving staff instruction. Mr. Fletcher.
well, is there another move that's anticipated, or a move that's being removed, that would keep some opportunities for Green Hope for folks who made an application?
We do have, we are going to back off a little, move into Green Hope Elementary in this plan.
From Highcroft?
From Highcroft, that is correct.
Should, in theory, should open up some seats for folks who make a transfer request.
Yeah, not many, because you didn't have a large group of people that were moved in that particular move, but
Okay.
in essence, yes, you would say.
That's a component of what you're asking about,
Tie-in.
but it's not a complete answer to what you're asking for. I'm not sure we have the seats on a traditional calendar to do what you're requesting.
And I'm not trying to get too far below the line.
Right.
I'm asking staff to look at it.
Well, kind of we are. We are at the place of below the line.
Okay.
I think one thing for the board to consider too is if you decide to change an area's application school, those students who are in that school, let's say elementary K through 5, would then be transferred out of that school to that new school that they're assigned to.
Yeah, and that's concerning because when we change these application assignments, that feels like a reassignment.
It is a reassignment. That's what, we talked about that
Yeah.
last year. We don't treat it like it is, but it is.
It is.
But are you saying, Ms. Kushner, just so I'm understanding, are you saying you'd like all of it to be relooked at so that you're not necessarily opening new traditional seats for somebody to apply to, but you're looking at maybe redoing the application schools for Alston Ridge, for everybody in the area, try to look at it to see where you've got the most proximate.
Maybe not everybody. My main concern with this slide is the transportation equity. So let me pull back from that. I think Pleasant Grove having express busing is different than any other traditional
I
option.
would agree with you.
So, because Powell is not a proximate calendar choice, I think that should have express busing, and Pleasant Grove, or whatever the traditional proximate choice
Now
is,
equity makes sense
should
to me.
have
Before equity didn't make sense.
neighborhood transportation.
I'm
So
happy for both of them to have neighborhood.
Yeah.
That would not be equitable, but yes.
Sure, that's like, if we, sure.
So Bob assured me anything we asked for today, he could
Did Bob say
accomplish.
that? Okay, Mr. Snyder said that? No.
He said he would look at it and he would make sure it got done.
Okay.
At least half of that statement, he said.
Which half?
Look at.
So that was my, I'm sorry if that was confusing.
Sounds like, oh,
Okay, so that's why.
Okay.
Yes, but I think his staff is going to say no.
Dr. Martin.
No, I was just clarifying.
Okay.
What Christine said.
Thank you.
Ms. Cash.
I got to clarify something for me because I think I'm looking at something wrong. The Cameron Pond South, they go to what school?
Mills Park Elementary today, Mills Park Middle School today. They're proposed to go to Carpenter Elementary and Alston Ridge Middle School.
Okay. Is Cameron Pond, yeah, okay. Is there a closer year-round middle school to them? There's not. Is
No.
there?
The next closest one would be Salem.
Salem.
Okay. Okay, I don't think I have my right question. Nobody can do anything for me but me, so I'll go back to me. Okay.
Ms. Mahaffey.
I'm just looking at the, so Carpenter is one of our schools that has a cap. And we're moving students out of a capped school into a capped school, correct? With the Cameron Pond and Indian Wells move. So I'm just making sure, are we able to relieve the crowding at Carpenter, or are we just putting more of a burden on Carpenter and just shifting the burden from one school to another with this move?
No, so we did see loss in, a reduction in utilization when you go to slide 17. See Carpenter at 130, 148, 139, and 1920. And they would be down to 120, 113.
And those numbers are different from what we initially saw in
That is correct.
draft 1.
Yep, because we had moves in draft 2 that took students out of Carpenter and sent them back to Cedar Fork.
Okay.
And then we're moving Alston Ridge, Carpenter, Cameron Pond North out of Carpenter into Alston Ridge.
And we have growth in the Carpenter base.
We have some growth, more growth in the Alston Ridge area.
Okay.
Glenn, can you highlight again the Carpenter back to Cedar Fork? I'm looking at the maps and various plans. And
Yeah,
I'm
thank you. That'd be
having a hard
useful.
time seeing. I thought I had seen it, but then looking at the old maps, I don't see it.
Okay, so Carpenter today is this area here.
This is today or draft 1?
Today, this is Carpenter today.
Yes.
Okay, so it's this area here, west of 55, comes down here, has a piece here, and then it has an area here. It also has Kids Creek and Providence Place up here. Okay, so when we proposed to open Parkside, Kids Creek, we're proposing assigned to Alston Ridge, and Providence Place assigned to Parkside. There's a lot of students that live in this particular area here, okay, trying to find a more proximate school for them. So in order to accommodate losing that many students, we had to look at other areas to try to not take too many students out of the school to, overcorrect ourselves. So when you look west of 55 here, you've got this new development in here, along with Indian Wells and Cameron Pond, to fill those particular seats. You also have seats here that were lost to Morrisville.
Some of that new development is different from Plan 2 to Plan 3, right where your arrow is.
Right here.
Yeah.
So that's what Dr. Martin says.
We drew a line here at Carpenter Fire Station Road, so everything north of that is going back to Alston Ridge.
So they're currently assigned at Alston Ridge, and they will stay at Alston Ridge.
In draft 1 and 2, they were assigned to Carpenter.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay, I'm
Okay.
here looking at the feedback one in that map.
Your Carpenter Fire Station was not the previous line.
No, it was further south.
Yes.
Yeah.
So by
You're not
moving the
sending
line
back to
north-
Austin Ridge. You're
Yeah, they're staying.
sending more from Austin Ridge to Carpenter.
More from
No, they're
those
staying.
lines.
And before he was.
There's no students in that area.
Is that before or after?
I know it's good. It would have been.
So instead of going to Carpenter, they're going to go to Austin Ridge.
Which is where they are now.
This whole area here is Alston Ridge today, west of 55.
Okay.
And they're staying Alston Ridge. in this.
North of Carpenter Fire Station Road, it's proposed to stay at Alston Ridge.
Okay.
Now, which is the group that's staying at Cedar Fork that wasn't in draft 2?
That was this area here. And there was an area up in here at Westport at Twin Lakes.
I'm looking at the plan from the feedback presentation,
Okay.
and I'm not seeing any different line.
Well,
This is draft 1. Then you can see a little bit of a difference.
Did
Yeah.
it start to change? Oh, okay, it changed in the feedback map. Okay,
I don't have a copy of draft 2, so
yeah.
readily available.
Well, I was looking at the draft 2 map that had this same, where we are. All right, that's it.
so to recap what we've done from draft 1 to draft 3, we've reduced the Carpenter proposed base attendance area, increased the Alston Ridge base attendance area from draft 1 to draft 3, and increased the Cedar Fork base attendance area.
Including that little piece to the south, the Boot Hill down there.
This
There,
piece here?
yeah.
Yeah, there's no students in that area right there.
Okay.
So, can you remind me what the calendar application schools for Alston Ridge Elementary and Carpenter Elementary are or will be under this?
So they will not change from what they currently are. Carpenter Elementary is Green Hope and Weatherstone, and Alston Ridge is Green Hope and Hortons Creek.
And Hortons Creek, I mean, that's a tough school to get into. Is that something that we need?
It's not really an option at this point yet.
Right. So is that based off of catchment areas, or is that for everyone in the base assign area?
I believe it's for everybody. But I clarify.
Because,
It says for everybody.
yeah.
Would it be a fairly good ground rule as you're going through it, since it's staff's draft 3, that if sort of 5 of you all think, hey, make a change, then staff would sort of move forward, recognizing you'll have more opportunities for 5 of you to make a change.
Yeah, once we have a change on the table.
Right. Well, I was.
Yeah, Glenn and I talked about that. That's why I'm asking. That's why I said we are going deep today. We are asking people if you have a proposal, then we need to clarify it so that we know if other people agree with it.
Because on the bus issue that came up with Powell and Pleasant Grove, I just wasn't sure where you all landed.
No, I would like to see that change. I think Ms. Kushner and the equity issue is spot
I don't
on
know what
with
the
that.
impact on transportation is, so I'm trying to understand.
So let me try to bridge a gap here. So as Glenn is providing the final draft 3, and then we, with the final staff recommendations, and we're turning draft 3 over to the board for any changes between now and November 20th. I think that if you have questions, need clarifications, additional information, right now we're planning on bringing, and maybe we should have started with this, we're planning with bringing on November 7th, that's the next time, on the work session, any updates to any changes that maybe the board has decided to make to draft 3. So you can, if you are of a mind to make them now here, make them here, or if there's additional information that you need or a question you need to ask, that we can provide that information, and then bring it on the 7th for that change prior to the 20th.
So on the fact that about providing neighborhood transportation for the Parkside to a closer school, but I don't think that's what we heard in the hearing, that they wanted that school. I mean, so are we just providing neighborhood transportation and then people won't be using it because they just wanted a closer school?
One of the options that staff put forward the last time we met was we can offer another school that's close by and just not seat anyone until we have seats available. So it's really, in essence, offering an option that's not really an option.
Yeah.
Staff didn't feel like, based on the information we've gotten from the board and the public in the past 9 to 10 months, that wasn't really something that we would want to recommend.
So if we, that's why I don't want to just put transportation on and then only 2 people take advantage of a neighborhood transportation to a school that I heard the public say they didn't want it. So that's my point on the transportation. And if they're not going to use it.
I think it's hard because, I mean, if we offer, for example, Hortons Creek, they're not going to get into Hortons Creek because we don't have any room. We don't have seats. So do we offer a proximate option that makes you feel like you have a choice, but you can't
No,
get
we don't
in?
do that either.
And so I don't
know that we can make anybody happy there.
Mr. Butcher?
Well, I think what we heard, and particularly from this community, was a traditional calendar within 4 miles of where I live.
Yeah.
Okay, we don't have that option.
That's what it is.
Okay,
Yeah.
so the next thing is to say we can provide neighborhood transportation to the next closest option we have, which is what staff has put on the table. Although they put it on with express,
Right.
and I would say it needs to be neighborhood. And if after 60 days nobody's using it, those routes go away,
But there might be like 2 people using it.
and that would be fine. That would be fine.
We have students now that are base assigned to Alston Ridge that are already who have calendar assignments to Hortons Creek, to Cedar Fork. They're there now.
To Greenhook.
To Greenhook. And now, under this draft, this plan, they would get, instead of having those assignments, they'd have assignment to Pleasant Grove with express busing, or Powell, which is too far away for some of them. So that's
a challenge.
That's what I think is not fair, and
I
I would
agree.
like to see some changes. So maybe my concerns will be more answered in the grandfathering section, but for those students that are already at Hortons Creek or other schools, if we offer that as an option, wouldn't they not stay because they're already there?
Those would.
Yeah,
But
so
for
it's not so
newcomers.
much the calendar option for the school moving forward. It's those students who've already made a choice.
Right.
And how are they impacted? I understand your question.
That's my concern.
Thank you for
Sorry that
rattling around long enough for me to understand.
We were trying to get there. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Fletcher.
Thanks.
I mean, I will tell you, I can't rattle around, because my brain doesn't work that way, so I was like, yeah, I'm going to need some guidance, which is also personally why this is harder, and
Yes.
I'm unfortunately, personally, leaning more towards making Parkside traditional, because I can't rationalize with lack of seats. I know, I was like, this is going to kill Roxy, but that's really where I'm at right now, this moment.
I mean, do we have extra money to build extra schools? I don't know.
Well, Johnson's.
Well, I mean, we don't. We don't. We can't. We can't do that. And I don't mind.
Go ahead.
I don't mind that we provide transportation to Pleasant Grove, but I thought they clearly said they weren't going there.
So maybe we pull it off and
You did have your hands raised, Ms. Cash, sorry. Before I sidetracked you.
No, you're fine. I
No,
don't
I
think
think-
that's an option, is to make Parkside traditional, because I just feel like we don't have enough seats in that area.
You said it's not an option. What'd you say?
It's not an option. Oh,
For Ms. Cash.
Right.
Ms. Mahaffey, Mr. Fletcher.
I think what we were hearing from families, or at least my interpretation of what I heard at our meeting at the schools and here, was that Pleasant Grove without transportation was not an option.
Okay.
And because finding the time to drive out there and you're going against traffic is not an option. My concern with the express bus option for Pleasant Grove is the equity piece. And as much as I want to help Powell, I think we need to be fair. And I think having Powell as an express bus with the Y at the Y would provide that before and after care piece that a lot of people say they can't do magnets for, and it cuts the bus time. So for me, I'm leaning towards, yes, keep Parkside year-round. Our job is to provide an education for students, and to have it traditional to me says we're going to be capping, and then what would our cap school be for Parkside? Because we have Cedar Fork, which is traditional and capped, Mills Park, which is traditional and capped.
Right, that's what I'm
And so
seeing.
I think it's not ideal. I think it will be a hard choice for families to look at proximity versus traditional calendar, but I think offering Pleasant Grove with neighborhood busing and Powell with express would be, for me as a parent, more of an option that I would consider than the reverse.
The express busing at the Y, that would only be based on participation. If they have enough participation, it wouldn't be an automatic.
And in terms of that, I mean, the Y could be a stop on the neighborhood pickup.
Or the express stop, could it not be just the
Yeah,
express
so
stop without having to go to before or after?
So my,
Yeah.
It could be all of those. It could be all of those.
elsewhere in the presentation, we're talking about changing the year-round choice for students in a traditional, or vice, for kids in a traditional calendar. In Briarcliff, they've chosen to go to Marshall. This plan says in the future, folks who make that choice would go to Adams.
Okay.
So those folks have articulated, let us stay where we are and provide our own transportation, however you might code us.
Okay.
It's not necessary. Just let us stay where we are, and then age out.
Right.
And if someone else wants to go from Briarcliff, wants to go into a multi-track school, then Adams would be the place they would go. So I can see that same concept. I've kind of bought into that concept on the Oak Grove, Adams people. And I can see that same idea being applied in the Marshall area where we're having to make these kinds of choices too. If the parents can get there, and I think most of them can, to be able to stay at their school. And they have a choice to change, but to stay at the school where they've been, provided they can get their kids there regularly and on time.
Without transportation.
Yeah, without transportation.
Does that have an impact here on this piece right now?
Well, it has an impact on what Christine brought up in terms of
Because I'm trying to understand.
in terms of changing the calendar option. Does it impact folks who've made the calendar option previously?
That part. No, I can't, yeah.
So if they made if their previous option was Hortons Creek and they did it, but the new option is going to be someplace else, do those kids have to move?
Yeah, I totally agree with that.
Not do that.
I'm saying not make them move,
Because I don't have time for,
but not let anybody else go to Hortons Creek.
yeah, no.
But the kids that are going to go to Parkside would go to Parkside.
Yes.
New, yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
And I think the only downside is that it doesn't relieve overcrowding at some of those schools.
Immediately.
It slows down.
It slows it down.
Right.
And I think for the stability of the students.
Parents would still have the choice to take the new option with transportation.
Yes, you guys are being much more eloquent than me, thank you.
So just to clarify, so we're talking about revising the grandfathering rules for K-8 to allow all students to grandfather back? Is that what we're saying?
I'm specifically on this calendar option
So just
group
for
of
this
students.
group. Okay.
Right.
Well, and other calendar option.
I was about to say,
Shift.
Yeah.
we're going to throw
In the
around the
later
word equity,
slides.
which I got a problem with, but we're going to throw around that it's
So how do we
equitable,
handle-
because
They need to become
they can
teams.
afford to drive their kids this much.
Right, so if you're currently assigned to Hortons Creek, and now you would end up
As a
getting
calendar option
as a calendar
student.
application student, and you otherwise get shifted to Pleasant Grove,
Right.
if you applied, you would become a T, which means you now have to
Transfer.
provide your own transportation. That's not the way our other grandfathering has
For
worked.
calendar
And-
application students.
Exactly.
Yes.
And
Yeah.
last year, we changed grandfathering
I know.
purposefully.
That's right.
So I know, on the other hand, and the district was well served by that.
Well, this is still purposeful, I think.
Are we talking about this in order to keep this part in the plan?
Yes, y'all are.
Because we're talking about the things we can do to make people,
Yeah.
but the plan will stay the plan, right?
Sort of.
We're not
I mean,
changing the plan, we're just trying to make it
Well,
easier for the people that will be in the new
if
plan
they're-
to stay where they are.
What were the numbers of, later on in here, it has the numbers of the folks who are currently attending Morrisville who would go to Adams, and the number attending Adams who would go to Morrisville, and it's like 30 and 15. I don't know if they have the exact numbers, but 30 and 15 won't bother either school as those children age out.
Right. But we would accept the plan as it's
Yeah,
being
I'm
proposed.
not wanting to change the plan.
That's right. So this plan, what
But
we're looking at
potentially,
right
we are saying
now.
change grandfather, so that is part of this plan, just not this section.
Yeah, because the grandfathering, the policy allows you to create additional grandfathering opportunities in the plan itself.
Right.
Policy lists some basic grandfathering.
Okay, well, so when I look at a student assignment plan, the grandfather is a big part of it, but I still like to know where the areas are being assigned. So the plan to me is more where the area is going.
These are not shifts in the areas that we are
That's what-
proposing.
Right. So we got to get those nailed down. And then we got to say what kids can stay where they are.
Yeah. And staff has made some changes between drafts, so this has been adjusted to
I
come.
just don't want to get, I
Yeah,
don't want to get
No,
into
I think the plan's still intact.
Yeah, that's why I want to be sure that we're not, yeah. I don't want to get too deep in the weeds until we get the plan adopted, and then,
Might it be helpful to continue going through the pieces
Yeah.
and then look
Yes,
at the
yes.
grandfather and holistically
yeah,
for all the
that's
schools?
how I feel better with it.
Okay.
And I have things at the end that I'll jump back to.
Okay. So moving on to Alston Ridge Middle School. Again, proposed to open under the multi-track year-round calendar with a capacity of 1,600. The traditional calendar application school of West Cary Middle School. Impacted schools being Davis Drive, East Cary, Mills Park, and West Cary Middle Schools. So here are the before and after maps. Okay, the yellow being Alston Ridge Middle School. There's a portion here of Davis Drive that is being assigned to Alston Ridge Middle School. They have Alston Elementary base. Portion of Mills Park Middle School. And a portion here of West Cary being assigned.
At some point, I know we talked about this once before, when we look at the student assignment plan, can we have like the year-round written behind it and the traditional, and I mean, I know you've got nothing else to do. I just know that's a hard thing, but sometimes when I'm looking at the alternative application schools, I'm struggling a little bit with.
You mean like on the slide before? Go back.
If it's not your area,
Including the calendar on that, and then also in the slide.
Unfortunately, that's what I do. I keep
What
going
we're
back and forth.
proposing on the next slide, it's at the top as well.
I'm like Roxy. I
Proposed
just keep
year-round.
going back and forth. to the
Yeah, I know my school. but
Yeah,
we don't
my
every
schools I know, I don't know all your
Right.
schools, and sometimes when people are saying,
Yeah, no, I agree, Roxy.
So Glenn, are there any changes between draft 2 and 3 for the proposed base assigned areas to Alston Ridge Middle?
Not for Alston Ridge Middle School, no.
Okay.
Okay. And here are the data tables. Green Level High School.
Could I ask a question?
Yes.
Similar question that we just dealt with. We've got some students who are at East Cary by choice. You've moved some out at their request to Alston Ridge Middle. Students who are at East Cary by choice who want to stay at East Cary wind up being what? Is that a grandfather question? Is that a calendar option question? Because they were already in a calendar option, and the calendar option is being changed based on the current plan. Their calendar option not being changed, but their school they chose is being changed back to traditional.
So, for example, I'm at Reedy Creek Reedy Creek is my base. I've applied to go to East Cary as my year-round application school, and now I'm reassigned to, let's say, Alston Ridge Middle School, and now I'm no longer at East Cary, and I'm being assigned to Alston Ridge Middle School. Is that what you're asking?
Well,
Go ahead.
So they would be eligible to grandfather back to East Cary based on the grandfathering rules that we implement.
Or to their base.
Or they could go to Alston Ridge Middle if they want to stay year-round.
Well, that would be the school that they would be assigned to as their base. They could go to either or.
not the original base you're talking about.
Okay, all right, I think I
So if their new
understand.
base is Austin Ridge, then they could do either one,
Okay.
essentially what you're saying.
So to give another example, students who live in the West Cary base attendance area after the proposal who were attending East Cary today, if East Cary opens as a traditional calendar for 1920, those students would be assigned to either Pine Hollow or Salem, depending on where they live. So they would be assigned to that school for 1920, and then they could request to go back to East Cary, but it would be on a different calendar if that proposal goes through.
Okay.
They
All
would be
right.
able to grandfather.
That's going to be an interesting communication challenge
Yeah.
for those students, that particular group of students. Okay.
So Green Level High School, again, opening with grades 9 and 10. Impacted schools being Apex High, Cary High, Green Hope, and Panther Creek. And so here are the base attendance areas before and after. Again, no changes from draft 1 or 2. One of the questions that came up the last time about Apex was, what about the growth in the Apex area? And staff, again, looking ahead in our 7-year plan, H12 is going to be opening in 24-25, which you can see is in the Apex base attendance area today. And so what we were hoping with moving students out of Green Hope and out of Cary into Apex was to maximize the new capacity that they have opening in a new school, and to also look ahead to the students that they would be losing when we open H12. Because H12, the possible impact area would be Apex Friendship along here, Apex because it's in the Apex base attendance area, Athens Drive, which is here, Middle Creek over here, and Holly Springs down here.
And just to clarify, that's potential because that school is not coming online till 2024.
Correct. Those are just potential.
No need to panic.
Yeah, so I
If you
just
live there.
labeled all the schools in that immediate area. Yes, that is not anything set in stone as of yet.
Well, I had spoken against this move previously, and I'll reiterate that. The move from Green Hope to Apex, the growth of both the Apex base and the Green Hope base is basically zero. And until there's a significant turnover of families living in those communities, it will be that way. Funding is not assured for H12. It's in our plan. We may wind up having to build more elementary schools and another high school by the time we get to 2024. So I think to not make a move today, or to make a move today based on a school that's not funded, is less of a good move than moving kids out of a school for homes that haven't been built yet. So I would, I guess it's the MacArthur Park area, I would strongly recommend that it be left at Green Hope High School.
And how many kids is that?
I don't have those numbers.
Well, it goes from
MacArthur Park would be
Green Hope
So it's this
at
little bit.
100%.
He's just looking at
a little over 50.
50 kids, a little over 50 kids that we're talking about not going out of
Not
Green
going
Hope.
out of Green Hope to Apex at their new facility.
Where is it on the map?
I agree with this.
Is it this big?
Is it right there?
A little bit higher? How many?
And Glenn, can you,
Three in the whole area.
Oh, okay. So MacArthur Park, there's also another area that's connected to the MacArthur Park area.
What is that? Where's
Mike
that?
is saying it's 173.
at high school?
Total movement from Green Hope to Apex is 173 base students.
At the high school level?
High school level.
Where's the area on the map?
So that's from these two sections though,
It
right?
would be this section.
This area here.
Oh, yeah, okay, yeah, I see it, okay. Both those
You're
there,
talking
right
about just
there?
the north section.
Both
that you're-
those, no, because one's in Cary.
One's out of Cary.
Well, this piece is out of Cary into Apex. This would be out of Green Hope into Apex. There's a small little section here, but that neighborhood has
nothing
not
there
come
yet.
online yet.
Yeah.
Both of these are existing to existing, so there'd be full grandfathering.
That would be correct.
So current Green Hope students would stay at Green Hope. What about rising, but not rising freshmen?
No.
Unless they have an older
Unless
sibling.
they have an older sibling, okay.
But again, we have to recognize the grandfathering works if you can provide transportation. If you can't, it's really not an option.
Right.
I would prefer to leave that area at Green Hope. That's one vote for doing that.
So that's 173
That are aging out.
that are
In both of
aging
those
out.
areas.
173 that are
Right.
aging out. There's no growth going into that
That's
area.
my understanding.
The 173, both of
The
these
age
areas,
range both are really
They get all grandfathered.
both of the Green Hope areas. Not in Cary.
But he said without transportation.
I don't care. I don't know if the Apex space is aging.
The reality is there's more growth in the Apex Friendship area that we're going to have to deal with than in the Green Hope area to be dealt with.
Okay.
Just to speak of the aging out, with MacArthur Park specifically, we're not really seeing any significant reduction in numbers until their current second or third grade students. So that's
What is that?
8 or so years before we're going to see some aging out.
So they're not aging out.
Not according to our data.
How many trailers are
Not
at
aging
Green
out.
Hope High School?
High school, I believe, has 37.
At least 30.
30 what?
It has 37.
Trailers?
Yes.
At Green Hope,
Yes.
they're not aging out.
And I've got the students that are capped out. How many capped out students?
There are 140 some Panther Creek kids there now, which would offset this move.
Where do they go? Where do we
Well,
put
they're
them?
not going to move from
Green level.
Going to Green Level.
Green Level won't give Panther
not
Creek
gonna-
relief.
Some will go to Green Level, some will go to Panther Creek.
Lizzie just told me that we are not doing our job educationally if we don't make these seats.
What? Oh,
Your
yeah.
quote.
No, I mean, our job is, yeah,
No,
it's not the calendar.
It's the same thing if they're in trailers.
Yeah.
Still overcrowded and capping people out. To be equitable, it's the same thing.
So you're saying not to take that area out of Green Hope.
Right. I'm asking that it not be taken out of Green Hope.
And what did you say about Panther Creek? What are those kids in the Green Hope for?
What are their
They're
kids capped out of Panther Creek, about 140 some, Glenn?
Double checking that real quick.
And there will be no reason to cap anybody out of Panther Creek moving forward because they're splitting sending a portion of their population to Green Level,
Okay.
and they'll have enough capacity to not have to cap any more kids out.
Okay. That's helpful.
Assuming they keep all trailers.
Well, we need to keep our trailers.
There's no
Panther has
plan to move any
33
trailers.
You can't move trailers yet in this world.
No,
No.
Not in this
but
world.
when we've got these 30-plus trailers.
No, but that's,
So Panther Creek today has 348 students capped out to Green Hope High, 115 capped out to Apex High at Green Level. And then there's
Okay.
18 other students.
340 at Green Hope,
348, that's correct.
348 at Green Hope. And I would submit that those students will age out And there'll be plenty of room for MacArthur Park to stay at Green Hope.
Okay, so
Because
then
you won't have the CAP students coming there in the future.
So those 348 students with, some of them will
Get
get,
that point, that makes sense.
will any of them get reassigned to green level, the capped out students
The
at
100
Green
and some
Hope?
that are assigned to Apex, right?
Right, the ones that are at Apex will, but the ones that are currently at Green Hope, I would
They
imagine.
will be offered a seat back to Panther Creek, and they have the option to stay without transportation or go back.
They'll stay.
So they'll
Some
stay.
of those capped out people be in the new green level base though?
115 of them, yeah.
Yeah.
Those are the ones that are at Apex
They're
now.
at Apex.
They're assigned to Apex High School now as the overflow. We did that on purpose last year, went ahead and assigned them to the school that they would be at. So the 348 will all be eligible to stay at Green Hope through the 9th to 10th, 11th, 12th grade, whatever.
Stay green level.
I'm sorry. No, Green Hope.
Green Hope. Sorry.
And green levels, what number did you use for the camped out kids with,
115.
at 115? Okay. But they will not go to Apex, they will stay at green level.
They have the choice to stay at Apex or without transportation, or they can go to Green Level. They'll most likely go to Green Level since it's approximate.
Do you anticipate any of those are upperclassmen?
So as of, probably about 60 of them.
So they got to go somewhere.
So they'll either go back.
They'll go back to Panther Creek, I guess,
They would go to Panther Creek.
or go to Apex. Yeah, because they'll have junior, seniors at those two schools. All right. But so the 348 is current enrollment, right? So that's the current 912. All right, so there won't be any freshmen, capped out kids coming to Panther Creek next year.
If they have a sibling there, they don't get to, they have to.
I mean, that's our hope, but we'll still have an
If they're a
enrollment
transfer
cap.
student, they wind up being a transfer if they,
Just, if you're in a capped out school and you have a sophomore there and they're going to be a junior, and then the next year you're not capped out of your school, do you get to choose to send your freshman with your junior at the school that's been capped out the year? If you are like capped out of a school and you're in a high school and you're a sophomore and next year you're a junior, but you have a freshman attached to you and that school is no longer capped, that you're coming out of.
They have a choice to go either to their base school or to the overflow.
They can't. They can stay with their sibling in the school, the overflow school.
Yes.
Okay.
Any takers? You have a
I would
position
support
on the
that.
table.
I would support that.
Two.
I support those.
Me too. All right. Got that?
What was that final?
There was more, there was 5.
But we'll revisit that.
Bill
when
suggested change
12 comes online.
That was to leave MacArthur Park.
I would
on
do
Green
that.
Hope. Bill, you want to restate it, to not make the change to the Green Hope assignment area, correct?
to leave the area on your map above the blue line that's red
The MacArthur Park area?
at Green Hope, yes.
Okay. So that doesn't include the carry into Apex or the Panther Creek into...
No, I didn't say anything about Cary.
Okay, you just clarify.
Okay, so just that.
I'm removing the Green Hope to Apex. I'm asking that be removed.
Does that include that new development area south
If there's no
of
homes in it, you can put them wherever you want
Yeah,
to.
please don't take that. If it's a new development and it's in that area, they should go to the school where
Your space.
So just
Yeah,
this
where there's
particular
space.
area here, just to
Whether it's
clarify.
Apex or Green
This is
Level.
the area.
That's
Yeah,
my
you can go
understanding,
down.
yes.
One that's really
That's
good.
what I think I'm asking
even
for.
if it's
Yeah.
down.
Okay, all right, Lynn's got it.
And that's all built out, that's not dirt.
Well, there's,
Yeah, that's mostly built out with lots of greenways.
well, it better be. You just said it was aging.
You told
There
us
are
that.
greenways.
If you're saying it's aging out and then you're
You
telling
just
me there's
had
new
five- you
development,
just had
you're going to lose.
No, no, no.
Don't
better be
push it,
right.
don't
Yeah.
push it.
I want that area, not the others.
Well, I don't know. You ask them.
That's later.
Really? What's that?
All right.
Why that and not the other ones?
So moving on, operational efficiency.
Thank you.
We'll start with East Cary Middle School. With East Cary Middle School, for 10 of the last 11 years, from 2008-9 to present, the months of employment have been funded by Wake County Schools in order to properly staff the school. And I just think that's important to understand that, so for the last 10 years, or 10 of the last 11 years, their enrollment has not been high enough in order to have enough teachers where they earn enough teacher months to pay for all the teachers that they need. So staff had, or the school system has to.
Okay, so let me say that.
This is not my.
10 out of the last 11 years, target enrollment MOE beyond formula has been applied to East Cary Middle in order to support the multi-track year-round program. Because the multi-track year program requires some additional resources, the number of students at East Cary Middle wasn't high enough to support what needed to be done on all 4 tracks. So 10 out of the last 11 years, they have received additional resources, staffing resources, beyond formula in order to accomplish what they needed to multi-track year round.
I just want to point out, their enrollment has only once in the last 11 years been over 1,000. And at 1,000 students, that's only 82%.
And so, since we knew that for that long, that's 10 years, what have we done about, like, attracting kids to that school?
It's been an ebb and flow.
And
They had a STEM program that was pretty active for a while, and their enrollment went up for a bit. And then I think we've talked about changing the calendar in prior years. Mr. Fletcher has pointed out on multiple occasions that the base attendance area is not large enough to support the needs at the school, and they only have one multi-track year-round elementary that feeds into it.
Well, they had Morrisville.
They had portions of Carpenter and Morrisville.
Right.
As well as Adams.
And then Adams is the one that fully feeds in. And that's been part of that conversation over the last few years. How many multi-track year-round elementaries does it take to really fill a multi-track year-round middle school? And neither the base attendance area nor the calendar application area by itself are large enough to support the multi-track year-round at East Cary Middle.
And in this plan, we're removing part of their already small base to go to Alston Ridge Middle School because it's closer.
Right.
So we are,
That's
in this plan,
Kids
yeah.
Free Project calendar shift, we're proposing to increase their base, to actually give them a full base. We've never had a full base, so part of the reason they're under-enrolled is because they've never had a full base.
Which brings the next bullet point there. So if all of the students who live in the base attended the base school of East Cary Middle School today, they would be 54% full.
With a multi-track year-round calendar.
That's, under the multi-track year-round calendar, that's correct. For the capacity of 1,268.
So the history of this, it was 100% choice to start with.
Yeah.
And when it became something other than that, the base was never adjusted to support it. So we've got 2 other middle schools in this part of the county that are not fully subscribed. We are opening Alston Ridge as a middle school, and I'm wondering, we've got 4 elementaries feeding Alston Ridge. And if I go back to slide 17 and I add up the capacity and the projected enrollment, it appears that those 4 elementary schools will have right at 3,000 students in those 4 schools, assuming it's evenly across 6 grades. That's 500 fifth graders who should be moving forward into 6th grade. And the 6th grade in a multi-track middle school built recently would be 1/3 of 1,500, so 500 kids, provided they all go. And what I don't want to do is create another under-enrolled middle school. So then that raises the question for us as policymakers: how do we, A, increase interest in the program voluntarily, B, deal with the necessity of having 4, well, given the size of Alston Ridge, have 4 fully enrolled elementary schools to feed it. All right, and if it's a smaller school like a Lufkin, then what is the number of elementary schools that need to feed it? And then make sure we've got that and that they are robust and that program is promoted and supported. And we've got another challenge in another part of the county doing the same question. So I think it's important for us to keep a year-round program, to do what's necessary to make it vibrant, and then make choices as we move forward as to how it ebbs and flows to support our goal of additional capacity primarily. and secondarily parent choice, and then the academic advantages that some people see by having that program available to them. So that's not anything for us to act on tonight, but it is, I think, a takeaway from this process that we have to be intentional about what we expect from our multi-track program as we move forward. And it's not waiting until the next plan is drafted.
I know.
No, I agree.
It's got to be between now and then.
I agree. Need a bigger conversation.
I didn't want East Cary to change. I understand why it has to. I'll support the board's decision to do that.
And then the year-round kids that are there now that want to stay in the year-round program go where?
I would think Lufkin or Salem.
Or Salem would be better.
Which they didn't have the same response to further away.
Right. And they get transportation.
Yes.
There is a portion of the Northwoods base that we would propose that they can go to Pine Hollow due to where they are.
Yeah, they're way out by the airport.
Just this is. Do kids that apply for transfer out of the base of a year-round program automatically get to go, or is there a process?
No, so they would go through the request for transfer period. If it's not approved by staff, it would come through the appeal process if they submit it during that time frame. Then it's eligible.
So staff doesn't automatically.
No, the only time we will automatically assign a student is when they have a sibling who's already at the school. We will automatically, and they apply during the appropriate time period, we'll automatically assign that. The next thing we'll look at is K-8 calendar alignment. If we can accommodate both on the traditional calendar, then we would do that. If we're not able to, we'll let the family know that since we can't approve this, we could approve them both on the year-round calendar and then offer them that as well. Okay.
I do know there's going to be a lot of residential growth in eastern Cary. I don't know, there are going to be a lot of condos in the fence. I don't know what those will produce, and they won't produce them for 5 years or so.
Have we gotten a lot of students out of the North Hills condos?
I don't know.
But that was my question.
Yeah, our mixed-use properties do not produce a lot of students at this time.
So we'll see. There are also several trailer parks along that road that could very easily be converted to new home construction. But they're not. That's not today.
It's not in the short term.
So here I had just put together some bullet points about East Cary Middle School. So the current feeder schools are Adams Elementary, which is year-round, Carpenter, which is year-round, Cary Elementary is traditional, Dillard Drive is traditional, and Morrisville Elementary is year-round. Carpenter and Morrisville are proposed to feed to Alston Ridge Middle School according to Draft 3. So therefore, you'd be left with Adams, Cary, and Dillard. Other schools in the area that are proximate to East Cary Middle School, Briarcliff, Farmington Woods, Kingswood, Northwoods, and Weatherstone, they're all in the traditional calendar. So if we're looking at ways to try to increase the base attendance area, you only have other traditional calendar school, elementary schools to pull from. And just to note, as Mr. Fletcher brought up, the other two middle schools in the area, Salem and Lufkin, are both under 80% full. Other things to consider, Kitts Creek and Providence Place, which comprise of a large portion of the East Cary Middle School base attendance area. They're assigned to Alston Ridge Middle School. And Morrisville, which is currently split between East Cary and West Cary, they would now be assigned all to Alston Ridge Middle School as well. So East Cary, leaving it as a year-round school, would be losing a large portion of its base, so we wouldn't have a way to backfill that base without having to change the calendar. So staff, when we looked at it, what were some of the methods that we could use to increase the base attendance area for East Cary and keep it as a year-round school? We could look at converting current traditional calendar elementary schools to year-round, for example, of Briarcliff, Farmington Woods, or Kingswood. We could look at assigning traditional calendar elementary schools to East Cary Middle as a year-round and purposefully misaligning their calendars. We could also look at satellite areas with or without current residents in them. So just some feedback on each of these suggestions. Converting traditional calendar elementary schools to year-round, that would impact a large number of families. We looked at that originally, is that an option? And you'd be changing the calendar or impacting more elementary students than you would in multiple elementary schools rather than just one middle school. Assigning traditional calendar elementary schools to a year-round middle school does not align with our current plan, so that was not part of our recommendation. And then using satellite areas is not something that staff wants to recommend for several reasons. If they have residents in them today, the areas, you'd be impacting families late in this process, not giving them an option to be heard. If there are no students living in those areas, assigning dirt, as I had gotten from feedback, that doesn't immediately address the needs of East Carey and needing to provide it with students to help the utilization. It's inefficient for transportation when we assign areas that are much further away. And then, again, it just plays into the reshuffling because eventually, when it fills up, we're going to have to move those students to a different school. And so just trying to not reshuffle again once that area is occupied. So East Carey Middle School as traditional. It addresses the enrollment cap on Reedy Creek Middle. It reduces or eliminates the need for additional local funding to fully staff the school. And it's an opportunity to provide a more proximate attendance area for most assigned to the school. So the changes we're proposing for draft 3, this area.
Could you just,
Go ahead.
what did you say about the enrollment cap at Reedy Creek? Addresses. What does that mean?
So we would be able to reduce the number of students that are currently assigned to the school in hopes to take the cap off.
Okay. Thank you.
So the changes proposed for draft 3. So Kingswood in draft 1 and 2 was assigned from Reedy Creek to West Carey, and we're proposing to move it back to Reedy Creek. Okay, and this should be from. Okay.
I appreciate that because that's a magnet school that doesn't have a feeder pattern per se, and so those base students still get the magnet programming, even though it's a change from Montessori STEM to Reedy Creek. But I think that's.
We also had proposed a portion of the Martin base to move to Reedy Creek, and we've reversed that move as well. They will go back to Martin.
Why did we do
They'll
that?
stay at Martin.
Why? I forgot. Why did we do that? Why did we reverse it?
It's a diversity assignment for Martin, which would benefit being at Martin. Davis Drive Middle School to East Carey, that piece would be reversed as well. And you'll see, due to the reasons on the next couple slides, with the taking too many students out of Davis Drive and coupled with the move of not moving students from Highcroft into Greenhope, would go against what our long-range plan would be for that area. Reedy Creek Middle School to West Carey Middle School. That's this area right in here. So in draft 1 and 2, they were assigned from Reedy Creek to West Carey, and now we're proposing that they be assigned to East Carey.
That's not a new area, it's just a new destination.
That's correct.
Okay.
All right, and so here are the before and after maps. So the blue would be the East Carey base attendance area. The darker blue here being Reedy Creek. Again, that's West Carey. The yellow is Alston Ridge Middle and Davis Drive.
The Davis Drive is still getting some relief from Alston.
Yes, that is correct. The Carpenter Village area is assigned to Alston Ridge Middle School out of Davis Drive.
And this time last year, that area, for alignment purposes and to relieve crowding at Davis, was proposed to go to East Carey.
That's correct.
And so that move was held off,
We delayed it, right?
knowing that Alston Ridge Middle was coming.
That's correct.
Hopefully we can relieve the cap at Davis Drive. Is it in?
Well, it's not currently capped. It was capped
It
recently.
was capped. Thank you.
Still crowded.
Still crowded.
So moving along, so Salem Elementary, the moves we had proposed to increase the base attendance area of Salem Elementary and Middle School, we're proposing to continue with those. The same with Yates Mill Elementary. So here we talked about trying to address enrollment caps. So the next couple of slides we'll talk about changes to schools with enrollment caps. Combs Elementary. So here we're trying to reduce the enrollment at Combs. So we have a portion here that would be assigned from Combs to Olds. And then a portion here from Combs to Dillard Elementary.
And just for the record, as our conversation, because people may be listening from Combs, we're going to get a few more pieces of information to follow up on with some families.
Correct.
What's that mean? Oh,
There was a group of families who thought that we could move the boundary over to Trailwood. They thought it only impacted 4 families, but it impacts 55. So there's a few more details of information that I need to get back to them. But I just want to put it on the record that it's in process.
Heritage High School. We have students who would be reassigned from Heritage High School to Rollsville, to Wakefield, and to Millbrook.
And those current students, because this is existing to existing, would stay at Heritage.
That is correct.
This is just for
They provide their own
riding.
transportation. They can stay, yes.
They have to apply, though.
Yes.
Every
We will
year?
be contacting all the families that are eligible.
Just the first year. Okay.
So when we looked at proposing changes to application schools here for elementary, just wanted to point out a couple things. One, we had mistakenly put Adams on here. Adams is not an application choice for Yates Mill, so I crossed it out there. And then the next slide we're going to talk about, a lot of the feedback we heard that Mr. Fletcher had also brought up was, moving students in and moving students out. So here we went and pulled the numbers. So the number of students moving to Adams in these proposed moves is 115, with the proposal of only 39 coming out of Adams. So they would have a net gain of 76 students at Adams based on these moves. Oak Grove would be 10 in and 23 out, so they would lose 13 students with these moves. Morrisville would have a net loss of 77 students based on these moves. And Timber Drive would have a net gain of 30 students, according to these. The other piece to consider when you're looking at this as well is we have now maximized transportation efficiencies with selecting certain areas for the buses to go into and no longer offering 2 options for families. Yes.
This is where I think on the operational efficiency, the proposed change in application schools, is this green and red, does this mean something?
So green means that would be the school that we're going to assign the students from. So let's start with Adams. So Adams, if you are living in the base of Adams, you can attend Reedy Creek or Swift Creek today. What we are proposing is removing Swift Creek as a choice, and any students in the Adams base that are attending Swift Creek, we would move them to Reedy Creek.
Okay, why would you move them to elementary? Okay, all right.
Wait,
But
well,
is this one again where we
This
can
is the one.
address the grandfathering or whatever we want to call it
this is
issue?
where we don't call it reassignment, but it is, right?
That is correct.
It is reassignment.
And that's where we've talked about it, right? I understand that we can't necessarily provide neighborhood transportation to two calendar application schools. But if a family is going there and is providing their own application, could we not change their own transportation? Could we not change them from being a calendar assigned student to just a transfer student? That way they have to break, because the whole reason for doing this, I think, is our operational efficiency. We can't
Some
send,
crowding, but
many of these schools, some of these schools don't have crowding issues.
no, specifically Morrisville and Oak Grove do. Adams has available seats and Timber Drive has available seats, so that's why we.
But a lot of, but even, right, we've got a whole list down here that's, don't we? Yeah, I guess we're still mainly Adams, some Carpenter. But I guess my point is, if we would let those people become transfer instead of calendar option, I think that would take a level of stress away that would be a worthwhile thing for us to do.
That would be beneficial to parents. Staff just has concerns about that because if you look at this, when you look at the proposed in and out, in essence, everyone could choose Morrisville, and then Morrisville has 137 students, when under this proposal they would only have 30, minus any grandfathering. But so if everybody picks the same
Can I
choice,
restate that just to make sure I understood you correctly? If we're going in the direction of the conversation that's happening, the 107 that are proposed out might actually get to stay, which would mean that the proposed in plus the proposed out now become all in.
But some of the in are going to probably choose not to go in, too. And some are going to need
I
transportation.
know, that's worst case scenario, it's the in and the in and outs are in.
And currently, if the proposed out want to stay, they can apply through the transfer process. Yes or no?
say that one more time.
The proposed out, who would be, if they're currently at
Adams, and they're proposed to go out to Morrisville, let's say, the 39 students.
if they wanted to stay, they could request a transfer to stay.
They could request a transfer. Well, if they're eligible to grandfather, they can grandfather.
Right.
Otherwise, they can request a transfer to stay.
Okay.
That was my question.
And that would happen when in our process?
So the grandfathering requests will
The
happen.
transfer request.
That would be the request for transfer period, February, I think it's 20th or 21st through March 6th.
But this is where I'm looking for a more consistency of
I
transfer.
don't like one at a time.
And, we have to hear, what is it, 5,000 to 8,000 or so transfers?
9,500.
That's operational efficiency, too, we're trying to deal with.
Right.
Manpower efficiency.
Your hand's still up, Ms. Cash.
Well, okay, so this is a mixture. Go back to that other table, if you don't mind, please. Don't be that piece up. So on here, is this a mixture of like year-round and traditional?
Yeah.
Okay, so I don't really, so when I look at that, if I don't know the school, I don't know whether they're really in a traditional applying to. But we know if they're applying, and it's green and red, where they're applying to the same calendar.
No.
I mean, if you're
All of these are
if you're in
on the same
Adams
calendar.
and I'm applying to Reedy Creek and Swift Creek, Reedy Creek and Swift Creek are the same.
Yes.
Okay, so why would we ever assume that you would move kids out of an application school and not call that a reassignment? I mean, I'm trying to understand why we ever thought that we should be able to just take kids from one school and put them in another school and not call it a reassignment.
I don't think staff is really using the word.
No.
It's not a reassignment. I'm sorry.
Well,
Not counted necessarily in the numbers, I think. is
Well,
what
like,
you're saying.
if you take kids that have applied to a school, and now we say you can't go to that school anymore, we're going to send you to a different application school, to me, that's still a reassignment.
I think reassignment
It's based on
traditionally reassignment language and numbers have been based off of base attendance areas. So once you make a choice about something that's not your base anymore, it's more nuanced. But you're not incorrect.
So do we take kids that have applied to a magnet school
That's one.
and ever move them if they're not a base? Not if they're a base there, yes we do. But if they're a magnet application there, do we ever move them to a different magnet
We do
application?
not protect the status.
We do not, and that's always been a history of that as well. So, it's just
kids,
two disparate histories.
Okay, so kids that are in a year-round school don't necessarily get notice about being moved out of their year-round school to another school
We would
until.
not contact them. If they were part of this, we have contacted them.
But the reality is, magnets don't get shifted, transfers don't get shifted. The only ones that would get shifted is if we do this.
Our application.
Because we're changing your application. And that's what I'm saying.
I don't like that. I think it's unfair.
I accept that we cannot provide neighborhood transportation to 2 calendar application schools. We don't have the funds to be able to do that. That we can remove without being an inordinate burden, I believe.
I think so, too.
but I don't see any reason why we couldn't let it almost become an automatic. If you apply, but you have to request it. But if you request it, why could that not automatically become a transfer student?
I would think it should.
Go ahead,
I want to point out something, just so you understand, though. So when you go back to slide 17, and we talk about Parkside Elementary, and there are moves of students into the Morrisville base attendance area, the projected crowding is 134% in 2019-20. With trailers, it's 122%. Okay? That does not include these particular moves here. So that 122%, we're hoping that said they would have a net loss of 77, roughly, students in order to bring that down to make them less crowded. Today, they are sitting at about 100 students over capacity.
Which school are we talking? I mean, Parkside's a new school.
But Morrisville's that's to change to a new school. And don't we have?
Well, no, we have an area of Carpenter Elementary that's being assigned to Morrisville. It's the apartment complex that's right across the street.
You're talking about the Davis Drive kids that are in Morrisville and Carpenter being shifted.
No, this is Carpenter base today that's being assigned to Morrisville. I'll go back to the slide and show you.
I'm confused as to how
But
that
are you saying
impacts.
the reason this impacts
That
it?
change. How does that impact?
I'm confused how that's impacting this page, Glenn.
Well, because he's saying, I think the Morrisville
What I'm trying to tell you
Carpenter
is
can't go to Salem. They can't stay at Morrisville.
not
They're going to
these
Salem.
percentages, yes, these percentages here, based on the moves for Parkside Elementary, are as such. Then staff purposely went in and looked at calendar application changes so that we could reduce the crowding at Morrisville
That's
further.
the Davis Drive kids that get to go there now.
And so that's the proposal you see later on slide 45. So our hopes is that if that plan gets put forth, you will have additional students to relieve the crowding. If you allow all of the students to go, and worst case scenario, which is what we have to live with, is if you allow an additional 30 students plus the 77 that they were going to lose to go, you're making this number much higher, and you're overcrowding the school.
Ms. Whatever.
For slide 43 and 45, the piece that's kind of missing for me, and I understand the operational efficiency, I understand the need to relieve crowding, but it would be nice to see those percentages. I mean, we hear that Oak Grove is crowded, and that part of this is to relieve some crowding in Oak Grove, and you know, fortunately, unfortunately, Morrisville is in the numbers here for under the Parkside move, but we don't really get to see the impact on those schools. So I know, you know, what a few of these schools, what their enrollment is because they're in my district, but I couldn't tell you what the enrollment of, you know, Dillard Drive off the top of my head is. I can look it up, but I think for our parents and for transparency to show it's when we see this again, it would be nice to see that table, just to be able to have another way to see the impact on those schools.
Two things. I don't believe that the Timber Drive and North Garner are proximate enough, nor are they multi-track schools, and to have them on these two charts on 43 and 45 is not a good solution. And the impact of our plan is a long-term impact on crowding. And I'm sensitive, I think Dr. Martin's mentioned it, and so has Ms. Cash, that the opportunity to allow these students who are currently attending a school that we said they could go to with transportation to remain at that school without transportation, with parent-provided transportation, would be a reasonable accommodation as we change the future target school that they can choose. and they have a choice. If they need transportation, they can go to the new school. If they can provide their own transportation, and I will add, get there on time regularly, then the transfer should be accommodated.
That's what I agree with.
So I hear 4.
So
5.
what
No?
are you recommending instead of Timber and North Garner?
Well, based on I don't know what the most proximate would be. It would either be Oak Grove or Adams.
Which one would have more capacity?
Or
These
where does the
students are-
proximity make sense?
I think most of them are at Oak Grove currently. Those are the parents that I've heard from.
For some of Dillard, I think North Garner is probably proximate.
I mean, I know there's a desire to fill year-round schools, but I'm not convinced that we need to give everybody a calendar application school. I mean, I think the whole calendar application really came from the mandatory year-round that people didn't.
Right.
I mean, that's where there tends to be the major dissatisfaction. So that's where we ended up getting the calendar application schools. But if you're assigned to a traditional calendar school, does everybody at Yates Mill need to have an option like a Timber Drive, or can that even just be pulled? If you're already assigned to a traditional calendar school, do you have to have a year-round assignment with transportation provided? Now, there may be areas where we want to try to get you to a year-round
Yeah,
school
there's
to fill up the school.
Or to relieve another traditional school.
You know, Yates does need relief. Oak Grove is pretty full.
I mean, that's a good question. The companion, the other side of that coin is, do we need to establish clear draw areas for schools of the opposite calendar? So if we've got a fully enrolled,
Yeah, we're saying the same thing.
yeah, I'm not sure we can do that as part of this plan.
Not right now. I think long term, that's what we need to think about. Rather than just automatically saying everybody gets a school, we need to decide where do we need relief, where do we have capacity.
We need bus drivers.
So,
That too.
Glenn, if Timber comes off this list, where do the kids from Swift Creek and Yates Mill go?
So you're taking Timber
So
over.
if Timber comes off the list, it would most likely be Oak Grove if we're going to reduce it to 1.
Okay. And that would be folks who are in the Swift Creek watershed primarily, wouldn't it? I mean, between Swift Creek and Garner.
But it's by catchment.
But here's my
I
point.
think
Right?
I
Swift Creek is
prefer
low
leaving it as is.
anyway. Does Swift Creek need calendar applications year-round? Yates is full and needs some relief. So I can see having the calendar option potentially for Yates because that actually gives us relief. But I don't think we need more people moving out of Swift Creek right now. And of course, it'll be easier once that school gets renovated. But this is an issue, I think, like we're talking about, Bill.
So this is the area.
And they are by those last 3 are by catchment area.
They are.
Or last 2 rather than Swift Creek and Yates. And I think they have such large assignment areas given the geography. I think Timber could use more students. So I think I'm for leaving it as is.
I don't think those students will ever show up at Timber.
Well,
So
back to your earlier conversation. That's going to be it's a group. It's going to be the same thing.
So say that again.
Bottom line. I'm trying to go over here.
Okay, all right. I thought.
I'm going to leave you contact to you.
sort of to answer Mr. Fletcher's question, so I pulled up draft 1, and I'm looking at the maps from Swift Creek Elementary. So we had 3 different areas, Adams, Oak Grove, and Timber. It looks like we can take a portion of the southern portion that's on the south side of Yates Mill Pond Road. We can assign that portion to Oak Grove, the smaller portion, and the larger portion to the north and west could be assigned to Adams or off of Tryon Road there. So we could make a split there instead of using Timber Drive. That would be for Swift. Now let me go to Yates.
It's a track 4 school. It's not a multi-track school.
So Yates,
Those folks are currently in
How could it never be multi-track?
That was
Taking it off
another,
the
yeah,
table.
but that was another decision that this board made.
but there are not enough kids there to make it
Well,
multi-track.
if you
It's the
take,
same challenge
if
as
you
East
take it off
Cary.
its table, there certainly is not going to be any.
I mean, how many people do we have choosing out of
This is
Swift,
another
for example,
bigger-
into year-round schools?
I'm not going there again.
out of Swift into year-round schools.
Missed my chance.
I mean, Yates Mill, maybe a few, but
I mean, I am,
What would it hurt to leave it there?
having a single option is overdue. Fully support that. I think the ones you have more choice by are by catchment, so still, an address still would have only a single option, correct?
Yes, the address is
So
in the right
I-
direction.
So I think that,
Yeah, I think
the way you've probably thought of it
I do too.
is sound.
Just checking on Swift Creek, you asked how many students are applying out to their calendar. 113.
and there's largely to Adams and Oak Grove, I suspect.
Yeah, that would be.
I don't see any reason that hurts to leave it. Those are their.
Yeah, you know what I'm saying.
Let's not change it.
Well, does that help?
But I do
Grove,
like the
which
idea
does
that,
need
I do
relief
like
from
the idea
crowding.
that the student assignment could allow them to stay at their school
Yeah.
on transfer if they've been reassigned in 2 application schools.
Yeah.
I mean, my challenge here is Oak Grove is full
What?
and needs relief, and
We have
Swift
enough?
Creek needs people. So why are we creating a scenario to make it easy to go out of Swift to go to Oak Grove?
Well, now if you're in Swift's base assigned, you only have one choice. You don't get to go to Adams or Oak Grove,
Correct.
or, so it is reducing it to one.
So,
But I agree, we should not be we should be incentivizing what the system needs.
Exactly.
So are we going to have to talk about, or is that another day?
I mean,
There is
for
no
me,
more days.
there is a need for students at Timber and North Garner.
That's, yeah, I would not take those out.
And then again, they just have the one choice
so what we could do
by
is
catchment.
make a change to the area that we were going to propose to go to Timber. They could go to Adams for Yates Mill and then keep the portion assigned to Oak Grove. We can do that. It'll overlap with the changes we're making with Swift Creek because the 2 base attendance areas overlap each other. So we could make that recommendation for next time. It would probably still have some student movement depending on where they are. But again, if you choose to make those changes.
Are students currently able to get out of, or to get into Oak Grove? I mean,
Kindergarten
I
is
think
the best opportunity due
So-
to its crowding. That's generally where they only have seats available.
So Oak Grove could stay as a non-option for a lot of families.
A limited option.
Huh?
A limited option.
Limited option. So, right.
So knowing that, thinking that since we're not necessarily looking for a final decision now, we're going to go ahead and move on and see where.
Keep one, that's all I'm saying. I don't care which ones they are, keep one. One
You're
choice.
reiterating that for.
I agree. At most one per address.
One choice.
So we're not going to talk about, nothing, have the student assignment make
So again,
that
these would be the
decision.
middle school changes that we briefly spoke about. And again, these are
Application.
assuming that East Cary Middle School would be a traditional calendar school. And so again, staff can look at North Garner and removing that as a choice.
And while we talk about that for the East Cary, could we at least make a statement that we're planning to look at the bell schedule, because that is another issue with East Cary.
And West
And if we would at the time of the reassignment recognize that we're going to address that, I think that would relieve
That's a good point.
a lot of concern.
That is.
Well, I told you what Bob Steinmiller said
That is
before we
separate
started.
emails.
He said to have them look at everything and make sure it happened.
There you go.
One or the other.
Because what is it, 7:20
Hey,
start?
when did you talk to
It's 7:20 and 9:15.
To 7:30 at East Cary Middle. And so the idea would be to do what to
Push
it?
it back to, like, most of our middles are
8:30.
in second tier instead of first tier, aren't they?
They are?
But to have an elementary and middle.
That is a whole separate conversation. I'm very
That's not
happy.
true on our part here.
Yes.
David does have some thoughts,
Really?
We do
since we're talking about him.
We're not prepared to present tonight,
It's
and
not consistent.
we can share some information, but we have looked at both West and East Cary middle schools' bell schedules, because I believe there was a request from the board to take a look at seeing if we can make either or both of them later. We think we can accommodate without significant impact one of the two, but there are some ripple effects, and so it's a bigger than one school conversation. And we are prepared to bring that to you at an upcoming board meeting.
November 7th?
And what we would try to do with those changes is get better alignment with what the current standard is of high schools, generally Tier 1, Tier 2 middles, some elementaries, and Tier 3 elementaries. Because believe it or not, we've got some Tier 1 elementary schools at this point still.
It's a different hot button.
Oh, my goodness. One that's coming again.
The daily life of families. It changes families.
Daily life.
Daily lives, yep.
The first?
So just let me refresh my memory. The memory. These middle school moves were to some extent being explored as a later start time, supporting it as a more viable option from some of the families further west that may have it as a choice.
No. And I hear a lot from families that are currently capped out of Mills Park Middle, where West Cary is their cap school, having to get on the bus, before 6 o'clock. And I know many of our high schoolers do as well. But in addition to not being at your base school, having to go farther at an earlier time.
Moving right along.
And of course, all the do we want to call it grandfather or transfer or whatever options, I would like to also extend to the middle schools, right? I completely agree going from multiple calendar applications down to single calendar applications. But if you're currently there and are willing to provide your own transportation,
You're talking about page 45.
we're talking about
Okay.
right here,
All
page
right.
45, where we are right now.
And 43.
The same thing we talked about for elementary schools, I'd like to suggest that we do for the middle school.
And it may be possible when you get to the grandfathering rules to put it there.
Discuss it, yeah.
And many of those moves are because of the calendar change in East Cary for this.
Yeah.
So that's an additional part of that conversation, which we had spoken on previously.
All right, so to go back, we've got another school where we were proposing a base attendance area change. That was Conn Elementary. Again, this was from several years ago. We're still recommending this move to take place in 1920. There was an area in the satellite area for Turner Creek, and they had asked to push up that move. So in draft 2, we made this proposal to assign them for the 1920 school year instead of the 2021. Broughton High suggestions, we're still moving forward with those, changing the base attendance area from Broughton to Athens Drive. We have a neighborhood located downtown, or just outside of downtown, where there's a split neighborhood, and so we're looking to bring that neighborhood back together. Again, we're going to propose that we move forward with that move. And then we get to grandfathering. So the grandfathering rules that we were suggesting for elementary schools would be grade 5, students who are rising into grade 5 and their siblings for 1 year. That would be the only suggestion that we would make due to K-3 class size concerns. Staff is recommending that we would want to keep it at grade 5 and their siblings only for 1 year. Then for middle school, we were looking at existing to an existing school, grades 7 and 8, and their siblings could grandfather. However, students assigned to a new school, we would recommend only grade 8 only and their siblings for 1 year.
And the grade 7, adding the grade 7, that's beyond your policy. So that's an addition to the policy, an expansion of the policy.
For middle school, that means only new students, 6th graders, would be asked to make the change. Is that correct?
That's correct. Okay.
So the concern that I'm hearing for those folks being assigned to Alston Ridge Middle that are coming from a traditional base is that, and we talked about this before, that change of spending 2 years on the year-round calendar and going back to traditional.
Agreed.
And that, 7th grade is a tough enough year to add changing a new school. It compounds that, but then to, add calendar changes is
So is that what
something
school
else.
to what school?
That would be current Mills Park students that are proposed and Davis students that are proposed to go, well,
You're
no, not
saying going
existing,
from
but
traditional to year-round?
to year-round.
Okay.
Yeah, going into
Because
middle
it's
school
a
year-round.
2-year change in
Yeah, I thought you said
calendar.
it the other way around. That's why I
No.
wasn't
So,
following.
but,
No.
so if you're being reassigned from East Cary, you'd stay on the calendar.
Yeah, we did do that to
East
East Cary by changing their schedule. Those kids that were used to a year-round are now going to a traditional.
But they will continue under traditional into high school.
Right.
That's
So-
the difference of the Mills Park, Davis
Okay.
Drive to Austin Ridge, because they're your traditional,
Okay.
2 years on
Yeah.
year-round, back to traditional
For the first time in year-round.
for the first time.
But unless you only assign existing multi-track year-round middles students to a brand-new multi-track year-round middle,
Right.
this will always happen.
Yes, it will.
Yes.
And then if they have a younger sibling.
Why I would still argue that I would love to see all of our middle schools be on the traditional or modified year-round calendar. We can't do modified, but
Not
Because a
today's,
lot of people don't like that idea.
not today's
Even in the
calendar, not
public.
today's
we
discussion.
can't go there. We can't go
Find some
there.
land
now.
in Cary and maybe.
So I would support the expanded option for kids in traditional, who are coming out of traditional elementary school, going to a brand new, I don't know how we need to say this, going to the year-round, going to a multi-track middle school
For the first time.
to avoid that option, whatever the language is. Jim, figure out what the language is.
Well, and we have,
You've been on a roll today, Bill.
but we have students who were in Alston Ridge for elementary school. So
And
they
they
were
should
year-round,
go on to
but
year-round.
but for 6th grade, they went to
Davis or Mills Park.
Or Davis so then,
That's less of an issue because but it's still an issue. I think.
it's still an
How do you tease out the two and how to be fair?
I think this is
That's a
a
good
slippery
question.
slope you're
How
going
you
down.
fill the new school.
That's
And how do you
right.
feel as brand new middle school?
Well, that's less.
think it's a
to me,
very
that's
slippery
less of a
slope.
problem because we're going to fill it.
And so the question is, what does that look like for the school and the resources needed? Because we had this $25 million gap. We had a ridiculous gap that we had to fill. And so it's balancing the need,
We're
part of
just
making
talking
it
about
easier.
one school, right? We're talking about the one.
We're talking about one school, but we
Well,
have.
no, I want to make it
Yeah.
clear so that I know what
Just
numbers we're
Alston
covering.
Ridge Middle School, which is proposed to be year-round. So I'm trying in my head to balance the student need as well as what are the resources that we would have to provide additionally to that new school in order to support not having the ADM and giving those 6th graders and those 7th graders that will have to go because their parents can't drive them back to their traditional school. So it's a balance. And it's that part is
the concern to think about, though, is if you allow choice for seventh graders to go back, what if we don't even have enough students to run one class? I mean, because parent choice will dictate who's going to go and who's going to stay. How do we anticipate that and be able to actually fund a grade level with 4 teachers for those students?
Well, we just said that was our issue with East Carey.
Do we open a limited
Right.
number of tracks?
Well, then you lose the K-8 calendar alignment.
No, right.
We told this staff we wanted in this plan.
I know, but it doesn't mean the parents agree.
So that's the push-pull.
Right.
The more generous the grandfathering is, the more difficult it is to ensure that all of the tracks have enough students to be fully supported. Because the other thing that do I want to say this? is that when we assign students, even from a multi-track year-round elementary to a multi-track year-round middle, as opening a new school, we're not looking at the tracks they're on.
Right. We're not, yeah.
That's way too far down because that's done at the school level. So there's already some movement of tracks that'll have to happen.
I imagine there's communication between the middle school and how they balance their tracks and the elementary schools that
Yes.
feed into it.
They have to talk to each other.
Because there's got to, there's
That's
going to
part
be
of the guidelines that's supposed to be
Administered
And I definitely want them to manage
administratively.
Yeah.
So there's already in the master plan some ideas around the elementary feeders that are multi-track year-round and which tracks they're doubled on, which tracks they're singled on in terms of how it feeds to a multi-track year-round middle to try to promote balance in the tracks at middle school. It's the master
I
plan.
think it's a hornet's nest that we may not want to beat.
I had to put it out there.
Yeah, again, or we just have to openly say we're going to be consistent because that's what we just did at this time.
And again, last year we stuck to our grandfathering rules, and they served the district well. And the families were able to get year-round that wanted year-round. We had the capacity, and we were able to fill our schools more effectively, or enroll our schools more effectively.
It's difficult over there, though, at that area, so the fact that you put it out there is something that we really appreciate, the fact that
And it's a lack of land, and ideally, there is that need for traditional, but we don't have land to build another traditional middle school, which if we had this school not year-round, we would need yesterday, so.
or if we had Mills Park year-round, they'd all stay.
Well, I mean, that is part of the
But not everybody wants that. That's
But not everybody
that's
wants
not
that,
that's not a choice for now. That was a choice.
I mean, there are a lot of
Definitely.
year-round parents in this area who've been awaiting approximate year-round middle school.
Yes.
And I think they're probably very happy with the plan, and we're not hearing from them.
Or just approximate
Middle school.
period.
Okay, so we
That's
want
not
to look at the elementary grandfathering, any changes to the elementary grandfathering we want to do?
Well, we don't have addressed here the whole idea of this calendar. What do we want to call this calendar option issue?
The calendar application changes.
Where the calendar application school is changing.
Right. Do we want to call that grandfather, or do we want to just call that a calendar transfer, or?
Would it work just to say that these same rules apply to students attending a calendar option elementary school or experience a reassignment to another calendar option school under this plan, but that the sibling rules wouldn't apply?
You could, but I'm going to need a flow chart as a parent.
I mean, is that what you're saying?
No, because that's just grade
You're
5.
saying basically for a calendar application
Everybody.
school change,
Right.
that all students at any grade can request to come back.
Go back to that school.
It become
They
all
stay.
parents are
They
asking-
stay, but there'll be a T.
But you're saying but no matter what the grade.
Yes.
So yeah, that's different
Yeah.
because it's not about the new school capacity. It's almost like a new, different rule for
It's
existing.
about assignment. Right.
It is. It's a very different
Existing
situation.
to existing, because when you look back at like the Parkside, that would be able to allow Carpenter to take on the additional students that they've lost to the Kids Creek area.
No,
So
we're talking
only
about
keep it for
existing
calendar
to
applications.
existing, where we're changing the calendar application to largely deal with operational efficiency.
the reason I like it to come under grandfathering is just because your policy automatically says you can expand your grandfathering in the plan. So
I'm good for that as long as it appears.
as the language works.
Right.
So can we recap that change? I'm lost.
Well, where's the grandfathering?
So I'll just take some of the families in my district
It's not
that
in policy for elementary.
So how are we changing what's on the element, the grandfathering?
Oh, we never
So
had it.
it's a new grandfathering statement that would
There is
say,
no grandfathering for existing to existing?
Not for elementary.
For elementary, there's never been?
There used to be, there is not anymore.
Oh, that's all new to me.
Right. And it was about, we did that, I think it was about making the changes take effect more quickly
That was
because of
before
where
I
we
got
were.
Because of K-3 class size.
Okay. And it was,
Okay, go ahead. Back to answer
for
Thank you.
students attending the school through the calendar option application process, when the district changes next year's calendar option school, those students may choose to remain as transfer students
Okay. Where they are.
with parent transportation.
As they become
From a T.
transfers.
to meet
From
our,
a P to
They
a
go from
T.
Ps to Ts.
Yeah,
to meet our goal of a single calendar application school option. If there had been two and we're going to one, we're not going to force you to that one. If you want transportation, then you're going to that one. But if you're
Right.
willing to provide transportation, then you can stay at that second option that we used to provide.
Yeah, we would be prioritizing the transportation efficiency over the crowding efficiency and allow the crowding efficiency to take place over time.
Yes. Which is a little anti-Christine's point, but yes, that's what we're saying.
That's what's being
Actually,
proposed.
Lizzie's point too.
No, I mean, that's, okay.
Yeah, because we are going to crowd these schools.
We're going to crowd these schools and have more capped schools.
Just be clear, that's what we're
than
doing.
But a lot
I'm
of
doing
these
this?
calendar things aren't
Why is that?
By having this.
Let's make it stay.
Because they will stay.
But they'll
We can cap it.
I'm just saying that, let's just be clear, that's what we're doing.
The frozen
Yes, we have
embryo
some-
don't
Let's,
get
let
this.
me be clear on what you're saying, because do we know all these schools, if we do that, would be capped? You're
No, it
saying
wouldn't.
all those schools would be capped? if
I
we
didn't
did
say
it?
all anything, but over time you will, because they're going to stay. That's why we're having this conversation.
Yeah, there are schools
Yes,
that
they are. He knows
parents
that.
prefer over others,
Sure.
so they will all go to the same one,
The
unfortunately.
ones that are
Well, wait,
there?
But these
Yes.
are people that are already
I
there.
don't understand that,
Anybody new
Glenn.
in.
We're talking about folks who are currently attending
But, yeah, oh,
a school, they're currently
Well, we are
attending
bringing some-
Morrisville, and they're new for the calendar option for them is now Adams. How long can that string of children last that potentially would overcrowd Morrisville?
you're great. It'll last as long as they're in that grade, that's correct. But, so let's take, for example, Cary Elementary base students. They can apply to Adams and Morrisville. I can assure you that many of those families, when they make that application, they put Morrisville first and Adams second. And then
So they don't have that choice any longer.
Unless they're already there.
So we're only talking
So I
about people who are
don't
already there.
understand.
Right, okay, so go back to slide 44.
we talk about the impact.
And with the unchanged, Morrisville Elementary will be relieved 77 students who are currently at Morrisville would move to Adams or another calendar choice. If they're there at Morrisville because they want year-round calendar.
But if families choose,
if
all
they-
choose to go to Morrisville, so the ones that are allowed
The
to
ones
go-
that are already there,
The 107.
right.
The 107 may still stay, but then we're also giving an option to 30.
for them to go in as well.
But they're not all going to do that.
Okay.
I mean, that is the outside.
That's one school. You said all the schools.
I didn't say all you said that.
Oh, I thought you said we're,
I didn't say all you said.
I thought you said, well, now just know, guys, we're
Whereas
talking about
we're
half
trying to
schools.
get Adams to have more students to support their year-round
I
program.
understand that.
The 115 that we're now proposing to go into Adams could all opt to stay where they are, and then Adams doesn't gain their 76 students. And that's part of this plan that I think some of us asked the staff to address, the
But
capping
they-
at Morrisville and the underutilization of that.
Staff
So those two schools.
doesn't make the,
We're only
okay.
talking about those.
The 39 who are currently attending Adams, it would take a blasting pin to get them out of there.
Okay.
That's the whole reason we're having this discussion. They chose Adams. They want to stay at Adams. They don't want to be reassigned to Morrisville.
So Mr. Fletcher's talking about the stickiness of students. I mean, that would be in an economic term, the stickiness
The
of students to stay.
All right,
But
so
that, I
the-
guess, so for Morrisville, the 107 will probably also opt to stay and keep Morrisville overcrowded.
They might, but that group is aging out at least 1/6 every year. And then every student who chooses to go to a multi-track school in the future would have the choice of Adams as their choice.
Just a reminder of K-3 class size legislation. At each year, it's
Don't go there.
But K-3 doesn't impact these people. Because we're not talking about new kindergartners going in. So if you're kindergarten
But it's not just
now,
kindergartners. We've got crowding at all levels.
If they're at Morrisville or Adams, it's the same problem.
I'm just
in terms of
sharing information
K3.
with you. So you
But if it's at Morrisville or Adams, 18 kids in first grade is the same problem.
Yeah, I would need you to direct that not down there, Glenn.
Okay.
It's okay, I'm good for it.
All right.
Okay. So for middle school, so I guess just to recap, so I have possible changes to grandfathering for K-5 students who are affected by calendar application changes in this proposal, that they would be able to grandfather at all grades.
T, parent-provided transportation.
That's what grandfathers would be. They would go back as, they would make that request during the grandfathering period, we would contact them and let them know that they're eligible to grandfather back, and then they can make that request, and they would go
What about
back as
siblings who
transfer
aren't there?
students.
And does it seem like 5 board members are supporting that now? Is that something-
That's why I'm asking.
Yes.
I want to recap. We got 3,
Yeah.
4, 5. All right. So for middle school, am I assuming that you would like to do the same for middle school?
So far, does all that.
Yeah.
yes.
I would like to know,
I think it's
I'm not
more
for the new
important for middle
school.
school.
I think we need to keep Alston Ridge as a new school. We should stick to
So we're
our-
talking about
Just calendar application first.
Calendar
Let's-
application, I'm talking about,
only existing to existing calendar application.
Yeah.
yes.
Well, they would all be existing to existing
They'll be
calendar
existing.
applications. We're not offering Alston Ridge Middle School as a calendar application school.
Okay.
So,
I do.
I do.
I mean, I imagine there
Well, I don't know how many that is, actually, but
are there
it's 3.
kids in the existing Mills Park or Parkside base that are on traditional for their middle school as a calendar, or sorry, are there kids on a traditional calendar option out of East Cary? I would imagine would be the option for those kids now that are
Be assigned
in
to
the
West Cary.
assigned, sorry, that are out of, in West, I don't know.
So
Hold on,
Mills
let me think
Park
this
is
through.
not a
Hey, honey, I
calendar
feel you.
application
It's
school
getting
for
there.
anybody.
Correct.
So Mills Park is not a calendar application school for anybody.
But if I am a current student base assigned to East Cary, which is currently year-round, and I have a traditional calendar application school that I am at, so let's say I'm at West Cary, out of East Cary, and I'm proposed to move to Alston Ridge.
but you don't technically move. You stay at West Cary.
I
because
would
it's your
stay at
application
West Cary because it's my application school. Okay.
school. Those students do not experience a change.
Just making sure I'm absorbing all.
Absolutely necessary.
It is. It's tedious, but it's necessary.
It is.
And I have, so for the Ps, we just made transfers. Do are siblings able to grandfather for as long as that is possible, or for as long as that older sibling is at the school, and then they have to go to the base school, or go to the other application school?
I don't think it's an automatic, that's not an automatic transfer anymore.
How do we treat transfers?
If they're
Don't
transfers and they have a sibling who's at the school, we would automatically approve them.
And then we treat them the
Unless
same.
we're in the grandfathering rules where we would specifically say they only get 1 year.
Okay. So since they're a T,
So then that
they
would mean
can
a
do.
a 3-year-old today would not be able to get into that school because the grandfather there. Because if you're going to keep siblings out, for 1 year. But otherwise, they would just be transfers, and the siblings will perpetuate over the years
Including frozen
As
embryos.
transfers.
as transfers.
Did we not make, we talked about this, do we not make a change to the transfers that you have to, right, if I apply for a hardship transfer this year for my fifth grader, and I have a rising kindergartner, right, well, I applied hardship for my kindergartner, they got through fifth grade, now my kindergartner comes in, do they come in off of the same reasons for that fifth grade hardship?
That's what we-
Or do they have to reapply for a hardship?
They would have to make an application to get into the school, and we would guarantee it if they have a sibling who's already at the school.
Even if the hardship is no longer?
That's our only guarantee.
We were going to change that, we never
talking
changed
about
We
it.
talked about, I thought we changed
No, we
it with
didn't.
a sunset
I thought we
clause.
did too, but we didn't.
Let's put that on the list of things to deal with.
So you'd
Change
like-
the
so my
transfer
hearing, you'd
policy.
like to change policy with regards to transfers that no longer guarantees siblings.
I thought we did that last time.
I thought we limited it.
I thought we limited it and
We
it
limited it for 1 year.
Let's review it at the next.
Yeah, I think it would. Add it to your list
What about high school?
that we tell you to do, and then we go back on.
Was there 5 on the middle school, the application schools?
I didn't count 5.
That's what I was trying to figure out.
Oh, no, we did. Lindsay was a
I just had to have my
Got it.
internal flow chart understood, and then
We
So
now
the
have 5.
application school,
By the way, I still have
that's
your...
not Alston Road. Okay, I can live with that.
I'm all about the flow
And again,
charts.
the calendar issue, we
You know
talked about
that.
this before, right? If you have to change a calendar from our decision today for going to school next year on a different calendar,
We've done that last year.
we've done
We did
that.
that.
But that is kind of whiplash for a family, and we did talk at one time that we should,
We talked
calendar
about it last
changes ought to
year.
be decided today for a year and a half out. But this gives a little bit of that kind of breathing. Because if we just make a change to the calendar today, and you got to be ready for it next August.
July.
Or July. Good luck finding childcare, track out camps, etc. This moderates that issue.
No, this was something we,
Thanks for pointing
52.
that out, actually.
So I heard, just 1 second on 51, I heard conversations about 8th graders for new schools. Did we land on remaining where you have to be rising into 8th grade and your SIBs for when grandfathering into a new school?
Keeping it
For new
as is, you
schools, we
mean?
have to fill new schools. I mean, I don't like the issue, but
I heard language on both sides, that's why I wanted to just reiterate.
Sorry, can you repeat that? I thought I had a sneeze, so I couldn't even hear if it didn't come out. I just, like I was...
I'm wondering if you're,
Is there a change to that
if you
second
wanted to
bullet?
change the staff recommendation for grandfathering into a brand-new school. We're recommending that rising into grade 8 only with their sibling. Or are you looking to change that as well?
That's what you were talking about.
that's what I was talking
Yeah.
about, and I kind of talked myself in circles and out of it.
No, you still
From a-
agreed. You
No,
just-
I agree. It's from I don't like it. I don't like it, but I'm wondering, I'm also thinking about what the impact is to the school, especially with a multi-track school and what that looks like. And, if we're, again, as said by our chair, if this is an issue we are currently having with East Cary, are we just passing it on to Alston Ridge by not having
prefer that we
students
had.
in the seats to fill the
Christine,
school?
all
I
you
would
do is
prefer to keep them where they
We would
are.
prefer they stay where they are. So
But
that's
I also see the inequity of opening a new school that maybe only has, that doesn't have the resources to help the kids that can't provide transportation back to their base school.
I'm not sure if this is what Ms. Maffey said, but the struggle for me is I'm trying to find consistency here. I personally would probably have chosen the opposite way, but I don't think we should do to Alston Ridge what we're trying to get rid of East Cary. That's really the only reason I can't.
Yeah.
So Christine's point was to
Right.
only 8th grade.
I think Lindsay and I both said we don't like it.
I don't like it in
Keep
many
it the way it
levels
is.
too, but keep it the way it is.
we can't afford to partially open a school.
Right.
Right.
Be a brand new, beautiful school.
So on those bullets, so the
Auxiliary
first one
See, for me,
is
it's
existing to
held.
existing, and then the second bullet is existing to a new school. Would it make sense just to put that in there so when you come back to it future, so everybody understands that's why the rationale for 7 and 8th grade grandfathering in the first bullet and for Alton Ridge is different. I just parentheses existing to existing school, and then the next one is existing to new school with the Alton Ridge, so at least there's an explanation if you look back at it.
Thank you.
So slide 52, high school. We aren't recommending any changes from the previous grandfathering rules that we have recommended. Again, existing school to an existing school, all grades can grandfather back and their siblings. Existing school to a new school. Since we're opening the school with only grades 9 and 10, siblings of rising 11th and 12th graders can grandfather. Those students would receive district transportation until the older child graduates or the family moves, whichever happens first. And again, with all grandfathering requests, like I said, we will contact families directly, give them the link. We'll put information out about when the application period is open, and then we'll open it up shortly after the board votes on hopefully November 20th. So some changes that were not recommended from draft 1 and 2. We spoke about this earlier. The moves that we were proposing to move into Green Hope Elementary, so that's from Weatherstone, and from Highcroft into Green Hope, we're removing those as part of our proposal.
So we're not.
And I
We're not doing those.
Yeah, Ms. Mahaffey.
I appreciate the fact that we're walking this back to allow for more kids to transfer into Green Hope. I have to say that Highcroft has serious crowding issues, and so as I said when I met with some of these families, although this is being walked back today, I think looking at the crowding at Highcroft will not go away because there is a need to relieve program spaces lost due to trailers. I'm worried that we're going to be looking at a cap soon. And this is a school that's changed calendars several times in its existence. So just letting the families at Highcroft know that we probably will be looking at it.
They're not going to remember that.
No, they won't.
Let's not even try that.
And some of the calendar
But
changes.
I'm saying it,
It's
but
important to put it on the record.
I know,
putting it
but
out
it's
there.
just makes
But you're doing it.
It'll make me feel better to know it was said.
That's right.
That's it.
So another move we're not recommending for draft 3 is there was an area downtown that's assigned to Sanderson. We had proposed that they be assigned to Southeast Raleigh High School, and we are not recommending that for draft 3.
To keep it Sanderson.
Yeah, it will remain at Sanderson.
There were a lot of questions that came out going back to the move from Mills Park to Carpenter from those families. They had proposals. There wasn't a lot addressed here. How will, and no changes proposed. How can we get those questions that they had answered? Because I see a need. They felt there were discrepancies on page 13 between what we had for K-3 class size. We know that as much as we want it to go away, it's not going away. So knowing that these families are, and many others are, but specifically are feeling disappointed in no recommendation to that change and feeling like their questions were not answered, is there a way that the questions are being addressed?
I can certainly work with you to make sure that we answer their questions. I mean, staff stance on this is you've got a cap school, we need to relieve the crowding at the cap school. And, the staff standbys their numbers. We get that number, those numbers that are specifically on this slide are from power schools. So,
Okay.
Well, that's helpful because I agree with Lindsay. I think I forwarded you those questions, and if we can get them in.
We have a lot.
Yeah, we have a lot of questions, and I know.
Ms. Cash, Mr. Booker.
Did we add more area to taking out of Mills Park Elementary that was undeveloped? That undeveloped area at the base?
yes.
It's in there?
Yeah, we did, yes, that is in there. We
Okay.
didn't have it in this slide, but yes.
Okay, thanks.
Sorry.
Okay, so there will not be growth in those areas.
That's correct.
We're taking all that out?
Yes.
Okay. I'm worried we haven't done enough with the middle school, but I think that's going to be a future discussion.
Glenn, you and I had several discussions about the Reedy Creek population, and I'm looking at this graph on page 37 where it's indicating the utilization next year based on a 936 student capacity would be 66%, which suggests that 33% would be being held open for magnet students. It would also suggest that with the current population of about 1,000, that the enrollment at Reedy Creek would be decreased by about 400 students to 600 in this plan. I'm a little confused in that there are currently 140 magnet students there, which would be half of the target number that you want long term, and they're in the 66%. So we still need to move 400 kids out of Reedy Creek in order to accomplish other objectives in this plan?
To help fill East Cary, yes.
400 are moving to East Cary?
So they don't come in small, nice, neat packages. So we tried to keep elementary school base attendance areas intact. That is something we can certainly look at if you'd like to split elementary areas and have them feed to two different middle schools. That's not what we proposed in this plan.
My challenge is leaving open seats at a school that the base population has come to love, and most of whom would not qualify for a magnet seat because of the magnet selection criteria. So it just seems like we're being overly aggressive in pulling down the population at this capped school when it had 1,000 kids a year ago when the cap was put on, and we're going to bring it down to somewhere around 600 kids in this plan, and that just seems extremely aggressive. If what you want is 300 magnet seats when you're done, you're going to have 150 open seats after you attract your 90 sixth grade magnet kids, based on how I can interpolate these percentages. So is that necessary? Why is that necessary to bring the population at Reedy Creek down that far?
So when you look at, here's the map, okay? When you look at this area, here's the base attendance area of Reedy Creek here, okay? There are no other proximate areas to take in order to assign them to fill East Cary. Okay, when you look long-term, Reedy Creek is able to take magnet application students. West Cary is able to take magnet application calendar application students. East Cary, the only calendar application students that they would take under this proposal is from Adams Base. It's very small. So there are no other options for students to apply into East Cary. So we are strapped with trying to find a base attendance area to fill the school that will sustain it.
Even as a traditional calendar?
That is correct.
And we got 700 student traditional calendar schools all over the county.
So looking at the map here, you've got Dillard Drive down south of Capitol.
No, I understand that. But you've arrived at 600 kids for Reedy Creek. It was 1,000 last year. Why is that the right number for Reedy Creek?
Like I said, we took elementary base attendance areas, the entire ones, and assigned them to East Cary. If you'd like for us to split that, we can, and then we can work that to a different number where it would be 700 students assigned to Reedy Creek instead of 600 or 500.
Well, I'm not sure where they're going, because even after you assign them to East Cary, we're 750 kids at East Cary. So I just don't understand. This chart worries me that the utilization numbers are what they are, and we don't see what the population of the schools will be. And I'm not sure where those kids have gone, because they didn't go to East Cary in this plan.
So you have calendar applications, kids who calendared out, who would be assigned back to their new calendar school. I think what's missing from this is the Kitts Creek and Providence Place area. There's a large number of students in that area that are based at East Cary that are no longer assigned to the school.
I'm just looking at your bottom chart.
Okay.
You got 400 kids coming out of Reedy Creek. Your map says they're all going to East Cary. I don't see them. So I would love to see an answer to that as we move forward, please.
Yes, Ms. Kirsch.
Is Combs is decreasing by how many students? I can't tell by but
I think it's about 80. It's 50, 80, 85, somewhere in there.
so that's a large decrease. I know they're very crowded. Is there going to be some additional application seats open for that school then?
No, if anything, we'll need to reduce some of the magnet application seats.
Why?
Why?
I know it's crowded, but it's not any more overcrowded than most schools. Well, I mean, I'm looking at where it's
The target
going.
magnet number is anywhere between 30
No,
and
but
40%.
it's going to be at 109.
The commitment to Combs is that they're a magnet grouping that is between 30 and 40% magnet students. So we want to keep them at 30 to 40% magnet students,
Okay.
no matter what their number looks like.
Okay, so that we're not decreasing that.
Not the percent of magnets.
Okay, because it's a large
Our capacity is 200%.
No, but not, I'm looking over here where it's going. I know where it is now, I just know where it's going. My other quick question is, there's a bit, I don't know where this is, but on that south part of Cameron Pond, there's a Cameron Pond north and south, right? They have a choice of year-round. There's 11 year-round kids up above that want a different choice for, because they have a.
In terms of Westport at Twin Lakes in that area?
Yeah. What is that? What is the scenario I'm talking about?
So they are based at Cedar Fork. Okay, and so their application school is, they're based at Cedar Fork. Their middle school is West Cary, and they're in the portion that can apply to go to year-round at Pine Hollow.
Could they not apply for Alston Ridge since they're closer up there?
So we didn't offer Alston Ridge Middle School as an application school or Parkside for this year. In the last couple of years, we have had issues with families, a large number of families applying to go to the new school, and we couldn't accommodate all of the requests, and so that upset families. So it was, again, a choice, but not really a choice. And so at this time, staff is not recommending that they become an application school until we can kind of figure out where the growth is going to happen, how many seats will we have available at the school, so we don't have to turn around and then either cap or reassign students out in a short couple of years.
But that's not the. So you think all those 11 kids couldn't go to Alston Ridge? Those 11 year-round families?
So
I guess I'm just thinking they're close. This
so we
seems
can
like
offer it for one specific school? Is that what I hear you asking?
No, I'm asking for that area. That area of Cameron Pond up above.
So just one neighborhood, allow them to apply to
It's
also?
above that road. What's the road that cuts between the two?
No, we're not.
Criminal Parkway is
Cameron Pond.
the
It's not Cameron Pond. What am I talking about? Twin Lakes. Twin Lakes.
Lakes at
Yeah.
Westport.
Okay, Twin Lakes.
So your request
Isn't
is
there a road
for.
between two parts there? That one. Is there a
Well, there
large
used to be, and then we included them back into. So Airport Road
Okay.
in draft 1 separated
Right.
Westport from Twin Lakes and
Right.
Twin Lakes. And then in draft 2, we put them all together at Cedar Fork. And so now these families are reaching out because they want to go to Alston Ridge Middle School
As their year-round.
as their year-round application school, but that's not the offer that staff has on the board for that particular area in
And they can go to Pine Hollow.
Pine Hollow.
Pine Hollow is not new.
It's pretty new.
It's pretty new, so you don't think it's,
They'd have to get on 540.
I mean, that's
to
a
get there.
large,
I mean, it's easy to get to, but it's on 540.
And when we looked at that particular area
It's
and
far, but it's,
asking for Pine Hollow, but it's actually shorter distance when you look at the travel, the mileage.
so the toll
No, the mileage.
mileage.
they seem very close to Alston Ridge.
They are closer to Alston Ridge, that is correct, but like I said, we didn't offer Alston Ridge because we didn't want to overfill the school. But if the board would like to change that and offer Alston Ridge and Parkside as application schools, we can certainly
I
look at
would.
making those changes.
I would just because of the area distance. That's just mine.
I agree.
Two.
Neutral, I can support.
I would say the difference between, I mean, I appreciate it, having heard from a lot of families who couldn't get into the new schools. I appreciate the fact that staff is holding off and taking a look, because there is a lot of growth in the Alston Ridge base. And so, if we're going to offer it for a small group of kids, do we ask them to do it as a hardship transfer, or do we make that the calendar application school? That's the
We could
question.
do a hardship transfer. I just want to be sure
They
we
just wouldn't get
be
transferred.
consistent.
That would be the difference, is lack of
Right.
transportation.
And for middle school, they're going to get in and out 3 years. It's not long, it's only a 3-year commitment. It's not a long-term commitment. As opposed to the elementary.
And with a hardship, there's no guarantee. I just apply and go through the process, and if it's granted when it gets up to the board, it's granted when it gets up to the board, but that's,
I would like to be able, I'd like to see them be able to go to Alston Ridge. Since it's there.
I support you.
1, 2,
3.
Set it up.
Any others?
Sort of neutral.
Can I answer that on the 7th? I got to think about it.
You can answer it on the 7th.
So that proposal did not go through?
Deep dives to continue.
No. Not yet. All right.
I think we're done with staff slides.
I just have the calendar.
Yeah. Could we take a moment and kind of parking lot the issues that we have raised that aren't addressed in this plan, and kind of make a list before we leave this topic while it's hot?
Agreed, yeah.
So,
Where's our parking lot?
Lindsay, you're good. Make a parking lot for us.
Okay.
Well, Jim's brought up the middle school multi-track. Should our middle school programs be multi-track or not? What else? Help me. I'm brain dead.
Seventh graders, grandfathering.
I know, I'm great.
Yeah, I was like, I can't remember.
If we got this multi-track, should middle school, I'd like to apply that by district only.
Yeah, future discussion.
We should have.
How do we?
Durant Road will
How
be
do we,
multi-track.
what do we have to do from a policy or a practice standpoint to assure that the multi-track program is fully subscribed and robust? We're able to fill the middle schools.
Yeah,
okay?
particularly at the middle school level.
Right.
This gets to the, does everybody get a calendar application?
Yeah.
Or do we only provide calendar applications where we need it, either to relieve capacity or to fill empty seats?
Well, and that then suggests.
That's a question.
What is the catchment area?
Right.
That whole thing.
And if, as you said, Yates Mill tonight might not need an automatic calendar application school, it wouldn't prevent anyone from applying to a multi-track school and providing parent transportation.
Right. It would know.
So that the balance between catchment
transfer
area
instead of
and being a P or being a T student,
Right.
a calendar option student or a transfer student. Okay. And we have some folks at East Cary who our parent choice transportation from outside of the proximate area, for example. And should that be able to continue in the future? Okay, even if, then the decision becomes, is it detrimental to the school they're leaving? Is it for the health of the school?
Headed my questions from
Are there other?
Cameron on.
I have one that I just want to look at because this is just something I've been hearing. Is when kids are based in a year-round program and how many are being allowed to go to the nearby traditional school that is emptying the year-round and putting too much stress on the traditional?
So it's a health.
It's
How do we maintain health in
options
the
out? Are
multi-track?
a lot of them being given out of the year-round program? It may be hardship, but is there too many if we're going to talk about the system?
I think we need a general discussion about year-round calendar, multi-track, single-track. What are the resources that we both save and expend to support that program? What is the district? How is the district benefiting from the year-round program?
So that'd be in conjunction with how are we
Right. I think all of these are
recruiting?
much better discussion.
If we say we need 4 elementaries to fill Austin Ridge, what does that mean for Salem or Lufkin? In terms, are there 4 elementaries to be able to do that? Does that mean a conversion? Does that mean some other metric that we have to deal with?
Same with the northern part of the county.
Right.
Where we have
And can I just say that this is just kind of, it's like deja vu.
yes, it is.
All over again.
Every year.
So we had talked last year about establishing some principles, PLES, for assignment around year-round. And so it sounds like that's kind of what we're talking about
Yes.
again. It got shelved, and so now we're talking about it again. And that helps us define both a vision and a strategy around the multi-track year-round calendar as a part of the school system, where we are discussing and sort of defining their role either in parent choice or in school operations and system efficiencies and that sort of thing.
Seat needs.
Right.
There is a tension between parents and their choice around year-round and calendar, but also the 70% of our taxpayers who don't have students, who think year-round is a great solution to capacity. And so we have to balance.
It was at one
time. It was when it was choice. And then there were fewer, so we were able to fill them through choice.
But we need to make sure our conversation is beyond just seat capacity because,
22 in 1 year.
well,
I don't
we
mean
may
that
gain
year. I
some
don't know what that
savings in number of seats. The operation, I believe, is often more expensive. And so we need to look at a comprehensive.
Right.
We don't need to look at just one piece of it. We need
We
to
looked
do a
at that in the
comprehensive look.
90s over and over and over and over again.
But
We're just making a parking lot list.
yeah, but
Yes.
right. But
Everyone remember gets to put a thing on here.
specifically having year-round schools fully loaded, all 4 tracks enrolled, so that we are getting the benefit of additional capacity. Because if we're not getting that additional seat,
I also think
we're falling short of the cost benefit.
Exactly.
I also think I don't think the whole county is the same. So we need to look at how we treat year-round in one part of the county compared to the other.
And there's a greater need for seats in some parts of the county, as we found out this enrollment plan.
And I do think that's where we're going to have to have some buy-in. It's not, I'm a broken record. We can't just say, we're going to create these things without buy-in, because we will keep being here.
Right.
We'll keep creating the parking lot. If we're creating them.
Lindsay is trying to furiously sketch out everything that's in the parking lot.
She's doing a great job.
I need to go back one step into what we've talked about today in terms of actually draft 3. For the grandfathering, expanding the grandfathering for existing in elementary. Council just reminded me that we really need to continue to pay attention to what's happening with K-3. And so to the extent that that grandfathering impacts that K-3, how do you want staff to handle that?
Doesn't impact K-3 if we're talking about students who are enrolled today.
Depends.
Then we don't know how to answer
That's what I
that.
said. Well, on that call.
If you're a kindergarten enrolled today, in what, 4 years when K-3 fully kicks in, you'll be a third grader. So the kindergartners
So-
today are an impact.
So part of what we're looking at, as we move to capacities next and capping next, is that sort of a shift that, right now the legislature gave us a year to do this +3, and it looks like the +3 might be in place until 21-22 when it's a hard average of 18, 16, 17, 17. But if we don't start preparing now for that hard average, we're going to run into some problems that we won't be able to solve. So at the last minute. So what we're looking at doing is starting to bring down the averages as we grow into the grade level in which it will be needed. So this year, we would be holding the line at kindergarten in terms of what we're seeing, because those will be third graders in the full year of implementation. Next year, we will want kindergarten and first grade to be lower, because they'll be in third and fourth grade, second and third grade when they move up. And so that we're just expanding by 1 year at a time, a lower number, which because we're still on the K-3 average of 20, which goes away in 21, 22 again, would allow the grades that are not being phased in to be a little higher to offset the lower as we move up. Is that making sense?
It is.
So-
I think it's something we're going to have to sketch out, because that's so. We heard people asking us these questions about why. You just answered it, but again, everything we do is so complicated that yes, we're going to have to keep saying this and sketching it out for people, because I do think it's important that we're bringing people along in this conversation, because it is a moving target. We're scaling them each year to ensure that we're not kind of
Because if we're expanding the existing to
Right.
existing grandfathering in elementary, and we are not taking into consideration the K-3 class size, we are creating some inefficiencies and inability to implement the K-3 class size. The inefficiencies being that if we have a class with 24, that's going to need 2 teachers, even though we only get 2 teachers when you hit 32 or 38, right? So that would be additional cost to the district in order to handle that, as well as a really big classroom. So I'm throwing that in because that's a consideration as we expand the grandfathering for existing to existing in elementary.
Ms. Mahaffey and Dr. Moore.
Well, and just thinking of that and what that phase-in looks like at the 4th and 5th grade level, as we need more and more classrooms to accommodate K-3. I mean, I've heard from some principals that it is getting very difficult to hire 4th and 5th grade teachers.
Yeah, I've heard that too.
Because
Yeah.
they do not know what that end number will be.
Yes.
And to know that you're going to have 16 kids in a first grade class, to
32,
possibly double that in a 4th and 5th grade
It's different in
class.
different schools, too,
It's
on how
different
it's
in different
handled.
schools, but we don't have the funding from the state to provide a TA or a second teacher for co-teaching in the 4th and 5th grade classes, where arguably they need it even more with over 30 kids in a class.
So what are you saying?
I'm just putting that out there because I just need to say it. And
We're just going to look at it a little bit more. We're going to have to look at it a little bit more between now and November 7th when we bring back any final changes to draft 3 prior to the public hearing that evening, so that we can give you as much as we know.
So this is a little bit why I'm cautious about calling it grandfathering. I understand why you want to do that, and because of the way the policy is set up. But I feel like some of the discussions are moving toward sort of, what's the one descriptor for everything. We already said the opening a new school doesn't get that scenario. I guess my biggest concern is that some of these shifts are primarily being done because right now we're running buses for 2 calendar application schools and we're trying to reduce it to 1.
And we're going through the same neighborhood twice.
Right. We don't want to do that. That is independent of capping overcrowding, or any of those kinds of things. Those are the scenarios that I'm most concerned about that says, right, this is just for our transportation efficiency, so why would we create a instability for a family when it doesn't even impact what we're trying to do? That's a different scenario than if we're dealing with a crowding situation or a new school situation. So for me, my primary is where we're trying to be more efficient in our calendar application assignments. That one, it strikes me transfer should become a no-brainer. The crowding issue, if we can handle it, I want to default toward family stability. The opening a new school, we have to efficiently open a new school. So I kind of see 3 tiers here, and I don't just see it all as one type of grandfathering.
So the only
Does that make sense?
the only thing that I was saying when I sort of whispered to Kathy is just that you've made a number of shifts, including with the application school situation today, that I think staff just needs to look at their numbers and see what does this mean. I mean, you are under class size obligations already. They get more stringent over time, but you already are, under them. And just to be able to give you that information, because at some point you can't say we're going to guarantee this if it's going to take you over the class size limits. And so just those numbers just need to be assessed as you're moving parts. That the math needs to be run on whether that's doable and viable, so you don't put guarantees in your assignment plan that you can't live with. That's all. That's my only point.
Since this was the parking lot and since I'm the person with the pen, I did add educating and orienting new families on county schools, multi-track year-round magnets, K-3 legislation and construction. I think we heard a lot of positive response this year from families that we sent out the letter district-wide saying the enrollment plan is coming. Here's how you can view it. And that being their first point of contact rather than seeing it on Facebook or in a tweet. I think we need to, with so many new families coming into our county, let them know what it means. For me as a parent, as an educator, this was a big shift for me, coming from a place where there were smaller districts, coming, and learning about the system. And it took student assignment for me to delve into that. And so I think if we're able to share that information up front with families, whether it be through videos or whether it be through on-site, I don't know what that looks like, but I really think that there are a lot of benefits to this system. But when your first impact is getting an email saying your child is moving schools, that is not a way to understand a countywide school system and the growth issues that we're dealing with, because then it becomes very emotional and understandably so. So I added that to the parking lot.
Good segue. Magnet Fair, this is Saturday.
Mr. City.
I'm going to say proximity, healthy schools, and our use of diversity nodes.
And the use of it, did you say, is that what you said? Okay. She's got it. Anything else? Any other notes? Mr. Fletcher on the table, this is his recommendation, so I think that means he got his on the list. All right. Glenn, any questions, clarifiers? We got the calendar.
For the calendar, so I'll be back with you on November 7th. We'll come to the work session with any proposed changes. I'll just bring those individual slides. I won't bring a whole presentation to just update you, and then we'll include it in a final version for the public that you'll vote on the
That's it. Thank you. All right, everyone.
Your Davis Drive middle people are happy. Yeah, they're happy. Well, Davis Drive middle people are happy.
That's what I thought too. That's why I said that.
Did we pass the Twin Lakes getting to go to Alston Ridge? Did we pass that the Twin Lakes would get to go to have an Alston Ridge alternative?
I didn't write it down, but
Give them that opportunity.
I think so.